Good Wednesday morning. You're listening to Gary and Matt here on 1620 The Zone in what is an incredibly special episode. Some would say this is the most special episode
Don't bury the
that
lead.
has been on the air since this show became Gary and Matt. As we are joined by the Bigs to my Mac, the cornerstone of 9 a.m.s on Mondays, Mr. Jacob Bigelow. And on top of being joined by Jacob Bigelow, we are joined by the star of the show, the coup de grace of Hall men's basketball announcing,
the monkey
Mr.
to your
Gary
wrench,
Sharp, who is I don't know.
Mustard to your ketchup.
I don't know if we're Bert to the Ernie or Batman to the.
No, we're not.
I did not go there. You did.
No.
We have to have a whole year under our belt to be the yin and the yang of anything.
Jordan to your Pippen.
But on site in Providence, Rhode Island, as the Mavericks are just one day away from shocking the world, taking on St. John's in Rhode Island, Mr. Gary Sharp joins us. First off, before we get to your probably sauna of a hotel room, an incredible experience that you are having.
85?
Over in Provi. Oh, 81. That's perfect for you.
Yes.
It's like your ideal temperature. It sucks out here.
It's hailing.
Terrible. It is not just windy and raining and lightning. It is hailing mightily. Walking to my car, hail hit me to the point where I unconsciously said, ow, and that hurts. I got hit in the back of the head multiple times. It is terrible out there. This is the most bipolar weather I have ever experienced in my entire life. I almost played 18 holes of golf yesterday.
And you can tomorrow.
It's a hellhole. If for people who are listening, if you don't have to go outside, don't go outside. There's no point in going outside today. It's a dystopian universe. But all of that to say,
Gary, you're looking at the only people who are working today.
Yeah, that's what. So I'm kind of following from afar. First of all, being back on the East Coast with the Eastern time zone has completely screwed me up because it's 7:10 here. So my body clock, of course, will not have time to adjust. So I'm waking up early. But I am following, and yeah. So I saw that they increased for western parts of the metro 6 to 10 inches of snow.
Wait, that's what
it's weather whiplash. It doesn't make sense. So
I thought the lake was bad. I thought the lake was bipolar. I thought my English high school teacher was bipolar. This is a whole other level of things that we are experiencing here, and hopefully be safe on the road.
Okay, so why are we bearing the lead? The guest of honor has yet to speak.
Yes.
Okay, he is just chomping at the bit there. He hasn't gone to bed. He prepped all day.
Left. Come on now. Just because this is this is a little earlier than usual, doesn't mean I didn't sleep. But I'm happy to be here. And
he's more awake than me.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good.
This is absolutely incredible.
This is like my personal Christmas Eve. Tomorrow is my personal Christmas. It's my favorite day on the sports calendar, and here I am getting to spend some time with you all today. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you having me, man.
Wow, I thought yesterday would have been your Christmas Eve, and today would have been your Christmas, considering that you are on, this very incredible, important show that puts you over the finish line to defeat Mr. Mitch Sherman and the Michael Severe radio guest bracket to reach the Elite Eight. And
we don't need to talk about the current.
It didn't go well. I voted twice.
It didn't. Yeah, we don't need to talk about the results today.
Last week you were Chris Bryant. This week you were Junior Lake.
I'm Chris Bryant. I'm Chris Bryant on the Rockies.
Wow.
I'm Chris Bryant on the Rockies today. This week, Chris Bryant on the Rockies.
You are Chris Bryant in the months that are not June and August. And frankly, it's a little disappointing that you're not going to go to the Final Four. But if there was a time,
is it that bad? Let me go look.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad
right now.
It is pretty bad right now. Don't need to elaborate too much on that, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting cooked. I'm getting cooked out there. So that's where I'm at.
Well, you got the one victory you wanted.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? If you show up in the NCAA tournament and a 15 beats a 2, but you get knocked out by the 7th seed in the next round, you won a game.
I see what you did.
Yeah, it's like like we had Colorado week 2. We pulled out all the stops for Colorado. We made sure the crowd was fired up under the lights, big time scene. Will Compton was there. The whole nine. We pulled out all the stops for Colorado in week 2.
There, someone who's still in the NFL was actually there.
Yeah.
Which is.
So it's like you got an upset and then you get swept in the next round.
I mean, you really did look the best you had all season in your week 2 matchup. So I was going to say it was more so like Michigan being Ohio State at the end of the year, but Your analogy is probably more accurate in terms of. But look, we've brought you on here. If I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think this has been in the works for a while. We have been trying to get Jacob Bigelow on
since the zone launched
in that seat for quite a long time, and somehow we have found a way to get him on probably the best possible day he ever could, which is the day before the greatest sports day in the entire year, and the day after the biggest job on the market in college basketball got filled by someone incredibly familiar to Omaha. Mr. Darren DeVries will be heading to Bloomington, Indiana. He will be the next head coach of the Indiana basketball team in what was, I don't want to say, I mean, D-Rock deserved it. I mean, D-Rock is a really, really good coach. In the last 5 years, he's 125 and 44 in, D1 basketball. Last year was, this season was his first season in Power 5. He should have made the tournament. He didn't, but he still did an incredible job with the West Virginia Mountaineers, despite the fact he didn't have his best player for a majority of the season. And I know we'll get into what Indiana fans wanted and maybe what the expectations were into what this hire could have been. But just from your perspective, Jacob, what is your reaction? Where are you at right now? On 1 to 10 or however you want to put it, what does this hire mean for Indiana basketball?
I think it's a good hire for IU. I mean, they obviously wanted to swing for the fences. I still think the perfect candidate for the job currently resides in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he cut down nets at the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis this past weekend. But they missed the boat. They missed the boat by a season. He was ready to make the jump last year from FAU to a bigger job. Michigan got him, and we've seen how the year played out for Michigan. From the Indiana side, I mean, obviously, I've seen people, say it's disappointing, it's a letdown, it is what it is. That the Venn diagram of Nebraska football and Indiana basketball just is a circle. It's not a Venn diagram anymore. The reaction to coaching hires and coaching searches, carousel, that whole thing, it feels eerily similar to places we've been around here for quite a while. But I like the hire mostly because I think D-Rock will be able to do the extra stuff that comes with that job, but I don't think he'll get lost in it. And I think that's important for being the head basketball coach in Indiana, because it's similar to being the head football coach in Nebraska. You're not just a football coach. You're a statesman. You're a politician. You're the most well-known, you're the most well-known person in the state. And I think he fits that bill. And I'm sure the added financial incentive, whether that be his deal once it comes out from the Big Ten, or the support that basketball program has, just makes it all that more sweeter. I like the hire, and I think it's kind of almost exactly what IU needed in some ways, but I can see where the flip side would be as well.
No, this is people that at Indiana that are complaining about this. You have to look in the mirror and look at where your program is. All right, Bobby Knight is not coaching there. You haven't put a banner up in the rafters a long time. You know what? You have an athletic director who looks like he knows what he's doing. He hired the Kurt Cignetti of basketball. He hired a guy that has worked for some really good people in the industry, that has learned from them, that has gone out on his own and is a winner. And look if you believed in Cignetti in the fall, why wouldn't you believe in Darren DeVries in the winter with this hire? It's a really, really good, smart hire that you're going to hire a guy who will work his ass off, is a winner in a short amount of time, and will not be of the stranglehold from the Bobby Knight tree, where it's, oh my God, it's Bobby Knight. He'll be brand new. He's never experienced IU before. I think this is a really good hire, and it shows you that you have an athletic director at Indiana that said, you know what, this is what we need. We need a guy that can win, okay? We need a guy that knows ball. We need a guy that has won at 2 different levels, whether it be at Drake 5 years or for his 1 year at West Virginia. And by the way, it's been a bad 48 hours for West Virginia. We're going to go and get that guy. And when he's being interviewed at Iowa, and it makes Iowa look really, really bad. I mean, you pull back the curtain on Iowa and you go, ugh. But for Indiana, I think this is a fantastic hire. It's straight off the Greg McDermott coaching tree, who's now got 11 former assistants that are coaching in college basketball. And for the most part, all of them have had success. So I think this is a really good hire, and I think people in the Big Ten should be concerned, because D-Rock can coach, and D-Rock can put together a staff. And finally at Indiana, they may have found the winning combo. There has been money there. There has been support. And now they may have the coach that is perfect for it. They had the guy in Calvin Sampson. Didn't work out. They moved on from him, whether they had to or not. But I love this hire. I think they wanted Darren DeVries. They worked through some other candidates, but finally it came back to Darren DeVries, and they said, let's go get him. And let's don't stop. And they went and got him. And I think it's a great hire. I think the Big Ten got better last night when Indiana announced that Darren DeVries was joining the league. And we've talked for weeks now about why the SEC is really good. And this isn't a splash name hire, but if you're in the business, you know the name. This is a good hire for the Big Ten, but even a better hire for Indiana.
I love it because he's 49. I love it because he's young. I like it because
Thank you.
They're
Makes
not
us feel good.
Yeah, I like it because they're not going out and getting, some older guy who's been around the block who may only be coaching this team for 6-7 years, and it's immediately going to be they're going to come in and they have to win a bunch right away, and they have to make Sweet 16s and Elite Eights right away. I like the fact that he's younger. I like the fact that you have Doug McDermott talking to Jeff Goodman and John Fana and saying this guy is one of the most competitive dudes I've ever been around. I wouldn't be here. I mean, Greg McDermott is one of the greatest college basketball players of all time, and he's talking about how important this dude is to his development and who he was. And if you're a recruit and you're listening to that, you're absolutely like, damn, this sounds like a guy I want to play for. And I think it's a benefit to Indiana and to Darren DeVries that he gets to grow into the job, right? He gets to, this looks like this is going to be
grow into the job.
No, growing.
He's been coaching for a while, my friend.
But this is
hope it works out for him.
He's coached for a very long time. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's been a Power 5 coach for only 1 year. But I mean, grow into it. I mean, growing into Indiana, because Indiana is a pressure cooker. Indiana is a completely different, animal than anything that.
Can't you coach? If you can coach ball, can't you coach ball anywhere? Mike Woodson was hired because he was Indiana. That's why he was hired. He wasn't a very good coach, okay, but he still won there. Okay, so there's the ingredients of Indiana. Man. If you can coach ball, you can coach anywhere. Then they hired the Cignetti. They hired the Kurt Cignetti of basketball at Indiana, a guy that has won, that can coach anywhere. By the way, much older than 49. I don't agree with that sentiment.
What sentiment? I'm agreeing. I'm just saying that I like the fact that this isn't a older guy who he's just got to come in and win an Elite Eights. I just like the fact that there is a longer timeline with him. And that he can coach there for a long time. And on top of that, the idea of, well, if you can coach anywhere, or if you can coach in one place, you can coach anywhere. I mean, to be fair, Archie Miller made 4 straight NCAA tournaments, went to Indiana, and it did not work out at all. And the pressure, and we've heard it from, even Greg McDermott said it, the pressure there at Indiana is entirely different pressure than a lot of places you coach. And so look, there has to be a slight concern from the fact that he's only been at a Power 5 conference for 1 year, and Indiana, it's the expectations are massive. At the same time, I don't disagree with the fact that the guy's a great coach. The guy's an absolutely great coach, and I think it's going to work out. But I just do like the fact that there is a runway and that this guy has been around a lot of places. And to your point, has coached under a lot of great guys.
And we can't bury the lead with him. The lead is obviously he gets the job, but we can't forget about his NBA prospect son, who, if you wanted to design an Indiana basketball player in a lab, he would play and look like Tucker DeVries. So IU gets the benefit of, obviously the new coach who knows how to win, comes from a winning pedigree, a great coaching tree that continues to grow. And he's got an NBA prospect son who gets to come along with him for a year and help set things off the right way in year one of the DeVries era in Bloomington.
Yeah. And I think another thing too, Gary, you kind of brought it up where if you pull back the curtain, like, man, Iowa doesn't look good. And it's one of those things where if you look at it from the Iowa perspective, I think that, like, obviously with the money that they've had and the expectations that Indiana fans had, there was the hope that, hey, Indiana could have gone out and maybe have gotten a splashier name or a more proven name or a bigger name than Darren DeVries. I don't know if Iowa could have gotten a better coach than Darren DeVries. I don't. I mean, the guy is absolutely incredible, and he was linked to that job for a very long time. And it seemed like he wanted it, and it seemed like they wanted him, and they just couldn't figure it out. And I just think if you're an Iowa fan at this point, with how disappointing this season has been, and the fact that Hawkeye Carver wasn't even 40% full this year. I mean, what happened yesterday has to be a massive kick in the nuts.
I mean, it shows you got some financial issues. I mean, they would have had to pay West Virginia $4.6 million before April 1.
That was the buy.
They're already paying for Fran to go. Take out the NIL part of it, just some of the financials. But like we were talking on Monday, just because somebody is from the state of Iowa and their brother played at Iowa in football doesn't mean, and I heard this is his dream job. So this is where he's going to end up. Do we know that was his dream job? What if his dream job was going back to Creighton?
Yeah.
It's about opportunity. It's about opportunity and availability. And, I think if you're Iowa, you could look at it from the standpoint. Their athletic director swung for the fences. Okay. Iowa's still got some things to sell because they're kind of hitting the reset button. They have to find the right person to hit the reset. But I think there's some financials that came into play here about paying the outgoing, paying the incoming before you ever start really paying them, before you ever get into paying players, because Tucker's not going to come cheap. So Darren DeVries, who he will not look at, oh, you know what? Look at the years on my contract. Man, he'll hit the ground running at IU because you have to. The job forces you to do that. Yeah. But, he's bringing his son along, so his son will get paid. The one thing that Indiana fell into the trap this year is we talk about Kansas State, all the NIL money and how poorly they spent it. Indiana had a lot of NIL money. There's a lot of support at Indiana. If you win, the money comes. That happens everywhere. So yeah. I love the hire at Indiana because it makes sense. Mike Woodson doesn't get hired and you go, what? Why would they hire Mike Woodson and give him the keys to that car? This makes sense. For Iowa, now I'm curious, do they shift and then does Ben McCollum become the guy at Iowa like immediately? Or do they drag their feet again? Drake's getting ready to play in the NCAA tournament against Missouri. Once Colorado State is done, Nico Medved will be the head coach more than likely at Minnesota. But it's kind of the reality when you miss out on your number one target and it becomes public that that's who you're pursuing. You kind of have to face reality. And I think a lot of people in the Iowa fan base, they already know that there are some challenges. You were just hoping a guy like DeVries could come in and he would take care of those challenges. I think Ben McCollum, if that's who now they shift to, would also be a very good coach. Not as long of a track record as Darren DeVries at a higher level, but still he can coach. If you can coach, you can coach anywhere. Okay. And maybe I'm off on that. Some places just eat you up. But if you are a good coach and you know how to put together a staff and you have a plan, you can coach. You can coach ball. And both those guys we just mentioned can coach ball. I think it's a great hire for the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten needs to get better with their hires. And if you're telling me a guy from Colorado State's going to go to Minnesota and a guy from West Virginia who is at Creighton and then went to Drake is going to IU, I like where we're going in the Big Ten. I mean, it's going to force other schools either to look at their head coach or to be better on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you, Gary. Like, say McCollum becomes the guy at Iowa, it's all but assumed that Nico will end up at his alma mater when CSU season comes to a close. Those three jobs, going from Mike Woodson, Ben Johnson, Fran McCaffrey to Darren DeVries, Ben McCollum, Nico Medved. That's a pretty nice little upgrade for coaches in the Big Ten, and I think that would definitely make some of those mid-tier to lower-end, Big Ten schools have to, look in the mirror when it comes to basketball and be like, these schools are upgrading. What do we need to do to make sure we don't fall behind?
Yeah, and I think Jacob, you brought it up, and it's always a comparison. I think it's for the most part a fair comparison between Nebraska football and Indiana basketball. Sometimes when you have an open job, doesn't reality smack you in the face, thinking you're going to get these superstar coaches, these Hall of Famers that are going to come after your job? And they're not really.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Like that was my thought the entire time with the IU opening. We get us Brad Stevens, bring Brad Stevens home. Like gear down your delusions a little bit. Like, you gear down the delusions a little bit. And I thought the entire time they'd end up likely with a mid-major coach. I know we got the Goodman McCollum smoke screen last week. I didn't know what to think of that, but I mean, reality definitely hits you in the face because how how your job can be perceived, locally can be a little different than how it's perceived on the big stage. And I think that definitely came into play with this IU search.
Yeah, we talked about it. I think it was last week, Gary, about the SEC and how the SEC has been able to kind of rise as a basketball conference.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that we attributed that to was coaches, that they have gone in and they've invested heavily in coaches. And so I went back and did the math. We'll have to adjust it because Mike Woodson's contract here is $4.2 million. So we'll see where that ends up being for Darren DeVries and what he ends up getting paid. But the SEC, the coaching pay average for the SEC is $4.5 million. The average coaching pay for the Big Ten is $4.2 million. Okay, cool. Now both those numbers, I do want to adjust it here. There's only 15 teams that were in that number for the Big Ten because you got to eliminate Fran and Ben Johnson, and then there was one coach that his pay wasn't there for, and Vanderbilt, Northwestern. No,
because it's a public or a private school.
And then Vanderbilt, Mark Byington, his stuff wasn't there. Right? That's private as well. But they were both 15. So 4.5 for the SEC, 4.2 for the Big Ten. I do wonder a little bit though, and I want to make this very clear. Like I'm right on track with both of you. Like this is a really good hire, and Darren DeVries is very, very good, and I think it's going to work out. And with the amount of knowledge that he has and the fact that, Doug talked about it yesterday, Doug McDermott talked about how he's been able to blend some coaching styles, learning a lot under Dana Altman and learning a lot under his father, Greg McDermott. But I wonder if you were to get Tony Petitti in a private room and talk to him about, how do you feel about this coaching search and how this went down between Indiana and Iowa? I feel like he would say, man, like, Darren DeVries is a great coach, and that's a great hire for Indiana, and the Big Ten has gotten better because he is in Bloomington. But, man, I really would have liked Iowa to hire Darren DeVries and Indiana to go out and get a TJ Otzelberger or go and make a John Calipari-esque Arkansas move because that would have really raised the floor of the Big Ten. If Iowa was able to get a coach of Darren DeVries' level and Indiana – if they were able to go and get out and get that Hall of Fame incredible hire, how would we be talking about the Big Ten today? I feel like Tony Petitti, despite the fact he should be very happy D-Rock is in Bloomington, I still think that might be a thought in his head where, man, I wish Indiana just maybe had a little bit more buying power so Iowa could raise the level of that program.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that's, I've heard Greg Sankey talk about a little bit around that. I think you have to have some faith that the Beth Getz at Iowa will make the right hire, the right hire for Iowa. Like I look at hires and do they make sense? Do they fit the profile? I think fit's a big thing. We always talk about, hey, did they win the press conference? No, I don't give a crap. Did they win football games? Did they win basketball games? Are they the right fit? Are they the kind of personality that can handle the job and handle what the job entails? Sure. That's why Matt Rule. And we don't know how this is going to work out. Matt Rule was a great fit for what Nebraska needed at the time. Did Nebraska need somebody differently than Frank Solich after Tom Osborne? They definitely needed somebody after Scott Frost, a builder. Like I look at that. The fits are important. But I think what Indiana's done with their last two major hires is pretty impressive because look what they've done to the floor in football. And in basketball, I mean, they've kind of been, I think, middle of the pack. So that middle of the pack in the Big Ten gets a little bit stronger where, the Big Ten could live off top 9 teams are pretty strong with hires and their whole setup and their system and everything. So it'll be interesting then to see where Iowa goes to. But man, the MAC coaching tree is pretty impressive. And one of those guys is in this hotel that we're in. So we're in a hotel. I guess it would be a suburb of Providence, which, by the way, it's St. Joseph's Day here. All the local television is celebrating St. Joseph's Day. I never celebrated St. Joseph's Day.
Is that a big deal in Providence, Rhode Island?
It's a huge day here. Yeah. Alan Huss and High Point and Omaha are in the same hotel.
Oh, that's fun.
So there's another guy off the MAC coaching tree who will be a very, very popular person when all the chairs stop moving, which I think there are more chairs to be moved.
They're And we're going to get into that in a little bit because I know that Mr. Coaching Carousel to the left of me just wants to sink his teeth into Virginia and NC State and Villanova and the opening jobs and whatnot. But we got a lot. We got a lot to move on for. We got to talk about the Mavs. We got to talk about All-Americans. We got to talk about more coaches. Man, this week is the best. This is just the best week. It's just basketball. All week it's just basketball. You just sit down, you relax, you bum around, maybe have a drink or two, have a cocktail, maybe
a sandwich.
Split a gummy.
Yeah, I was going to say, and a turkey sandwich, supersized turkey sandwich if it's
sandwich.
you.
Can you hear about this? I love turkey sandwiches on my NCAA tournament weekends. You can't beat it. So, hey, don't go anywhere. You're listening to Gary and Matt here on 1620 The Zone. This is just only an appropriate song as the one and only Jacob Bigelow.
Hell yes.
Joins us in studio today. Gary Sharp will be back. He's just tuning to something right now, but he will.
He's got to warm up his room to 85.
He'll be here for quite a while, and then he's got to go and tend to activities with the Omaha Mavericks, who are in the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. An absolutely incredible accomplishment. We're going to talk to him because I want to hear about all of the memorabilia, the merch, the send-off, how
the pomp and circumstance of it all.
You and me are going to interview him just about the luxury that he's been living in for the last 24-ish hours. So hopefully the Mavericks will continue to live in that luxury, and they'll have to beat one of the best teams in the country in order to do that tomorrow when they take on the St. John's Red Storm at 8:45 at night. If you thought yesterday was a late tip, Jimmy, which you did think, didn't you think it was a late tip yesterday?
I think they're all late tips. These I got to watch because I don't want to say a bad word. I always say, paraphrasing, how come these damn games always start so damn late?
Hey, so I'm going to be watching the games.
But I'll be watching.
On my TV, sitting on my lazy boy that I purchased from NFM. Hashtag the NFM credit card. It's an incredible thing.
Matt, they sell computers at NFM.
I think we'll be purchasing that. But
you need one.
What happened to no free ads? You're giving NFM all this love
here.
I'm
gonna be honest with you. We've been giving them so many free ads at this point that I'm shocked that they haven't. You know what? I was going to say I'm shocked they haven't paid for it yet, but I think as I continue to talk about it, they're like, we don't have to pay this idiot at all because he'll just keep coming to our store and telling us all the things that he's bought.
And if they're listening, we need a new couch at our place. If you know, you know.
It's ridiculous. Hey, back to me and then back to you. Yesterday, I said something that apparently people were controversial about. I said that when I chill out and watch the NCAA tournament, that I love turkey sandwiches while doing it. I got a bunch of hate. You will not be chilling out.
No, you got some love though. Somebody tweeted at you about an Italian sub, and that sounded delicious.
And I retweeted it. You're going to Seattle today. What? Yeah, when did you become a North Colorado State diehard fan? That was quite the trip.
I like supporting my friends, man, and
plus Marshawn Lynch.
Plus Marshawn Lynch. But yeah, I mean, for those who are listening and that don't know, they're like, "Who is this goober?" I'll give you the cliff notes. In college, I was a student manager for 3 years at Nebraska, and when I was in that time in my life, I became well acquainted with former NCAA tournament hero. Sorry, Jimmy, and your KU quarters.
I don't care. He won me a lot of money that day.
Ali Farouk-Manesh of Northern Iowa fame, and yeah, tomorrow's the 15th anniversary of that game. By the
that'll
way,
make me feel old.
Tomorrow's the 15th anniversary of that game.
Shout out to Ali. You made me a lot of money in 2010, and I was very poor back then working at a TV station. So thank you.
Ali and I we're still pretty tight to this day, and I've made a couple trips out to Fort Collins. I was just out there a couple months ago when they played San Diego State, and that's where the Rams wound up for the postseason. Is Seattle taking on Memphis? So just continuing to support my friends because that's something I like to do.
I got some breweries for you during the next break.
Memphis will be banged up during that game, more than likely Tyrese Hunter, who's been out the last couple of games with an ankle injury, one of Memphis's better players. I don't know if he's officially been announced as out yet, but I think we're assuming he won't be playing. So that is a big matchup for Northern Colorado, who is a lot of people's darlings heading into this tournament. They are winners of 10 straight at this point, and had to win their conference tournament in order to get into the dance, and they are dancing because of that. And so we're eating salmon here in Seattle? I mean,
TBD. We're kind of just flying.
I'm going to tell you something right now.
We're flying by the seat of our pants
Seattle
once we get out there.
Take the choo-choo.
Seattle in March in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you think it's gloomy out right now in Omaha with the rain and the wind and the hail. I mean, that is a depressing city right now at this time of year with just the lack of sunlight.
It feels like it's gloomy there all the time. I was born in the Pacific Northwest and I haven't been back, so I'm due to make my return trip. So
for a black hole sun.
So we're checking off
get outshined.
Checking off a couple boxes with this trek for the weekend.
Yeah, there's a reason why it looks like you need vitamin D all the time.
Don't listen. I love Seattle. Stop.
Let's talk about this coaching search for a second. So one of the big dominoes yesterday fell. Darren DeVries, who and you and I talked about it yesterday. It seemed like Indiana had this coaching search locked up and sealed. That it really nobody had a great read on whether or not they were going after big guys, or there was a burner account that apparently is an insider for Indiana who said that Darren DeVries had this locked up for a week, and we're not using that as source material or anything like that, but it just seemed like Indiana had a pretty open and shut close lock on this thing, and no one was really able to get a read until yesterday when it turned out that DeVries was a guy who was kind of I want to say that he was practically like locked to go to Iowa. I mean, like we were talking as if, and not just like over the week, we were talking for a quick month. Of any time we talked about Fran McCaffrey, we said
I talked about it with you guys on Monday morning.
Yeah,
on Monday. Yeah,
it seems like DeVries is going to go to Iowa, and then all of a sudden swoop out of nowhere. Indiana comes in with a big old right hand and says, "No, we're going to take him." And so now it leaves Beth Getz and Iowa in a really precarious situation. I think Ben McCollum is kind of the guy, and not only just from a accomplishment standpoint from what he's done at Drake, but from a just geographical standpoint, going from Drake to Iowa is a pretty quick move. And, we'll see. It'll be interesting with McCollum because he hasn't truthfully recruited at a Power 5 level, or at a D1 level, rather. I mean, he was in D2 for a very long time, then just brought 4 of his dudes over to Drake, and now they're dominating. But where are you looking now? Is Iowa? I mean, obviously, I think it's kind of assumed that at this point, Minnesota is locked up with Nico Medved coming from Colorado State, where you will be going to watch their game in Seattle. Is it kind of a shoo-in at this point that Iowa is going to be the next team to fill this out, or is there? To me, I think that they got to go out and kick the tires, and instead of just saying, "Oh, Ben McCollum's had a really good year. Oh, he's over at Drake. He's not too far away. We're just going to go and grab him." I think that, this is a very important and inconsequential hire for Iowa Hawkeye basketball, considering of just how bad this year was, and just the fact that the fan interest is at such a low right now that I just don't think go out and say, "All right, I guess we're going to go with Ben." I don't know if that's the best decision for them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need to get this right. I mean, they can't mess it up. I mean, we got the Fran fatigue articles last year in the middle of Caitlin Clark's final last ride in Iowa City, and I think part of, and I will say this, I mean, I think part of like the fatigue with the Iowa men's program is in part due to the rise of popularity of the women's program at Iowa as well. But I think they're definitely doing their due diligence. I mean, I've heard that they've interviewed other people, not named Ben McCollum, not named Darren DeVries. They are doing their due diligence. But I mean, this is a program. I mean, and obviously, the last one of these was 40 plus years ago. This is a program with Final Fours. I mean, Iowa basketball's got, they've got multiple, they went to the Final Four in 1980. They've got basketball history. They've had, some good players come through there, even in recent years under Fran, the Murrays, the Luka Garza.
Yeah. They won a Big Ten title and had an AP National Player of the Year twice.
Yep. And then they got upset by Richmond after everybody picked them to go to the Final Four. People forget, but Hawkeye fans don't forget. I'm not taking shots. But they got to get this right. And Beth Getz, she's made basketball hires before. If Gary was on, a mutual friend of mine and his was hired by Beth Getz at his current job before she took the job at Iowa. And I think it's got to be. I mean, they have to get it right. They have to they've done their due diligence, but they also have to take a look in the mirror with where basketball is in the pecking order. And this sounds familiar to conversations we were having locally, right? About like what's the priority for basketball, because you know what Iowa football is. You may be nearing the end of an era there, and it's going to be it's a time of transition for Iowa in multiple sports right now.
It's funny when we talk about Big Ten basketball right now in comparison to the SEC and the success that they've had, this year, because it gets me thinking: is this almost like what the SEC radio shows were like during football season, where the SEC radio shows were freaking out about the fact, oh my God, the Big Ten is catching up. Oh my God, the Big Ten has made some great hires. They're getting, What if the Big Ten has emerged as the power conference? Hey, we're going to get to the point in the NCAA tournament this year where if the Big Ten starts losing a lot, which they typically do in the NCAA tournament these past couple of years, they haven't had a championship winner in 23, 24 years at this point.
25, right? On the dot?
25.
Yeah.
Like, it just gets me laughing a little bit that we're having the same conversations about basketball that they're probably having about football, right? I mean, not too long ago in terms of the shifting tides of, them emerging. And I don't think the Big Ten is necessarily stepping back, but the Big Ten needs Indiana to be good because Indiana is a basketball program, right? Just like how in football, the Big Ten would like Nebraska to be good at football because Nebraska is a football program. And so the DeVries hire is so important in that regard. But I think another factor that you have to waddle into this discussion is it's not just Auburn and Alabama and Florida and these big schools with all this money that are making the NCAA tournament. You have Texas, you have Mississippi State, you have Georgia, you have Texas A&M. These programs, and maybe less so Texas A&M, the three I named before, but the ones where you don't necessarily procure football or procure basketball to those programs, taking steps up and making great hires like Chris Jans and having them build those programs to the point where not only are they ranked, but they're also making the tournament. And there's no reason to believe or not to believe that this success for the SEC, maybe not in a 14 bid every single season in the NCAA tournament, but there's no reason to think that they can't consistently get 8, 9 to 10 teams in the tournament with the way that they are progressing and the amount of great coaches they have in that league. And so, which is why it always funnels back to, if you're Tony Petitti and you're looking at the Big Ten, you're like, man, we need Iowa to be a little bit better. We need some of these programs that maybe aren't straight on tied with basketball to be good in order to compete, in order to get back to that double-digit tournament bids, because how we view everything and how we view conferences and how competitive they are in certain sports is kind of the lifeblood of how we view TV networks and the money and everything flowing in college in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you want to look at a list of places where, basketball is probably not on the frontal lobe. Auburn, Alabama.
Yeah.
Starkville, Mississippi. Oxford, Mississippi. Athens, Georgia. Yeah, I think Georgia basketball is in the NCAA tournament. I mean, and it comes back to the discussions that we've been having about obviously there's a football monster in Lincoln that needs to get fed, but Georgia basketball found a way to make the NCAA tournament. And that was, in part due to the strength of the league and, the SEC definitely, the metrics and the numbers definitely boosted up their resume. But I mean, that's a bunch of, obviously, Arkansas makes the move with Calipari last year, and the Tyson Chicken Nugget family is like, here's a blank check. Here's some pig suey shaped chicken nuggets in stores to help boost the NIL.
We talked nuggets yesterday.
Yeah, but there's a whole all but 2 teams in that league made the tournament, and the 2 that didn't or LSU, which basketball, basketball's behind baseball at LSU.
Yeah.
South Carolina, they're trying to figure out plenty in Columbia. They've been soul searching outside of women's basketball and Don Staley for quite some time. And the Big Ten, I completely agree with what you were saying. Like the Big Ten at times, and obviously the Ohio State success this year, the national championship, all that, Big Ten football is still one of the big boys. It drives the bus. But there have been years in recent years where the Big Ten is probably more nationally been known as a basketball conference.
Yeah.
With with Tom Izzo and there's more. I think there's more schools in the Big Ten that I'd say are like definitively basketball schools.
Well, especially
than football.
Now you have to factor in the fact that you're adding USC and UCLA. And those 2 schools, UCLA being a 7 seed, but USC only being, not even being in the tournament, a little disappointing for the Big Ten. But if you go down the line, the Big Ten by far has been a deeper basketball conference than they have been a football conference as of late, right? And I think even, before last year in the emergence of Indiana, I mean, you kind of looked at your 3 top schools as Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, and those were kind of the consistent.
And then you add in Oregon, and there's your top 4 now.
Yeah, that's your top 4. But just talking about the Big Ten as basketball, like you for football, you name those 3 schools: Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. But then, like, Illinois is a basketball school, Purdue's a basketball school, Indiana's a basketball school, right? Like
Michigan State.
Michigan State's a damn good basketball school. So
Maryland.
Wisconsin, as of late, has been a better basketball school than they have a football school. I mean, they went to a national title not too long ago. And so, like, you kind of go down the line and you're like, this is a basketball conference, or at least you want it to be a basketball conference. And you have what has been the top football conference getting 14 bids into the NCAA tournament. And you have to start turning your head and asking yourself, okay, what are they doing that we're not? And like we said earlier, when we were talking about the Indiana job, SEC is paying coaches $300,000 more on average than the Big Ten is. And college basketball, despite their counterpart, college football, being such a money grab, still to this day comes down to a lot of who is at the head of the table, who is the top guy, who is the coach, who is recruiting. And so, the Big Ten, these 2 schools, Iowa and Indiana, are incredibly important for the barometer of health of basketball within that conference, which is why it was a imperative that Indiana make a really, really good hire for the health of the Big Ten. And they did in D-Rock. And I think that it's going to work out. And sure, is TJ Otzelberger or even Greg McDermott or other coaches who've been more of a proven Power 5, Power 6 coach with NCAA tournament bids, would that have been a quote unquote better hire, splashier hire? Sure. But Indiana just went out and said, nah, he's a good coach. We're going to hire him. End of story. We don't care. Iowa has to go out and they got to do the same thing. I mean, and the Big Ten and Tony Petitti have to be clamoring and rooting for Beth Getz to go and knock this thing out of the park.
Well, I completely and totally agree. I mean, the Indiana basketball fan base, I mean, it's like Buddy Garrity from Friday Night Lights. Like, I don't care about nothing else but winning. So go win. Like, the support's gonna be there. The finances are gonna be there. I mean, this past year under Woodson, their NIL pool was healthy. They brought in a bunch of guys from the portal, and it just didn't. They still finished with they were on the bubble and all that, but that's not where IU wants to be. Mike Woodson, decides to step down, decides to retire. He's got the best winning percentage of any Indiana head coach since Knight, and he gets forced out and arguably should have been let go after year 3, and he makes it to year 4. But I completely I'm in lockstep with you. Iowa needs to they got to get it right. They got to get it right.
Hey, it's been a fun first hour. It's only going to get more fun. 2 teams from Omaha are playing in the NCAA tournament tomorrow. We'll talk to the voice of one of those teams coming up here at 7:00 on top of some coaches. You were muted. You were laughing at yourself at this point. You made a joke that neither of us heard.
It was a great joke. It was a great joke that I cannot repeat it. No.
That's why the mic was muted.
Hey, you know a quick thing here?
Give me a quick. How good's that food?
So the NCAA is in charge of travel. And so our travel was all over the map on when we were going to leave yesterday. They didn't find out until about 9:30 Tuesday night when we were leaving. Sure. What is today? Monday night. They didn't find out until 9:30 on Monday night when the team was going to leave.
Okay.
But as we were, and we had a long delay at Epley yesterday, or at the Atlantic Aviation. Creighton and Omaha, their planes from Sun Country, their charters were right next to each other.
That's fun. A little Omaha camaraderie there in the airport before you get on the plane, and hopefully both teams make some big wins tomorrow. But we will talk about all that coming up. We'll talk about the disrespect that Ryan Kalkbrenner had to endure yesterday, along with the fact that Coach Greg McDermott just continues to build his legacy with other people who studied under him as coaches. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Gary and Matt here on 1620 The Zone. Well,
Hold on.
Selection Sunday is always fun because you find out who the one seeds are, who the top teams are, what your favorite matchups are. But what's always best about Selection Sunday is who's in and who is out, right? And who is on the bubble, who gets the last spot. And this year, more so than years past, was an incredibly controversial one, as all anybody could talk about, including myself, was the fact that North Carolina undeservingly got into the NCAA tournament and, well, got into Dayton and, the first four in, and then played yesterday 2 games that were on the opposite sides of the spectrum. First off, Alabama State and St. Francis, an absolute barn burner, absolutely incredible. Those are the exact games you want to see from 2 16 seeds, like 2 mid-major programs. I think Alabama State has 3,000 people enrolled in their school. Most people tweet about the fact that they've never even heard of St. Francis and Alabama State before, and they enter in Dayton, they play in this tournament, they play this absolute barn burner. I mean, fighting for their lives, and in part fighting for the right to probably get their butts whooped against a 1 seed, but just an absolute thriller in Dayton. What makes you love college basketball? My friend and co-host today, Jacob Bigelow, he says mid-major basketball is exactly how God intended it to be. And
it is college basketball in its purest form.
It is.
I will gladly get on my soapbox for that.
And then
Thank you. Love you long time.
North Carolina beats the brakes off of San Diego State. Funny enough, that was a quad 2 win yesterday. It wasn't even a quad 1 win. North Carolina.
Gary,
So
wasn't yesterday the NCAA tournament? You have blowouts and you have buzzer beaters. Yesterday's first game, and by the way, one of Omaha's non-conference losses was to Alabama State in a game in Akron, Ohio, back in November, an MTE. But that's why I'm a big advocate for 16 seeds playing in Dayton. And I know that's don't make them go there. Well, look what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
People this morning are talking about Alabama State. And they got to see that both of those teams play high quality of basketball. Probably, I would say 98% of the country has never seen either one of those teams play this year or have any idea, like you were saying, Matt, that the school in Birmingham or in Montgomery, Alabama is so small. They only have 3,000 students. But look at it. Everybody's talking about that game. It was an exciting game. It was exactly what a 16-16 game should be. Unless you're St. Francis, you don't think your season's going to end on a Hail Mary pass, a deflection, and a layup with 0.7 of a second to go. But Alabama State won their first career NCAA game. And that conference, which is well below the Summit League, doesn't have much money. You know what they're getting? They're getting 2 units because they get the money from last night and they get the money regardless of what happens between Alabama State and Auburn. They get that money. But we discussed, we're like, man, if Omaha's in the play-in game, that's necessarily a bad thing, other than you would have been, tournaments announced and you're on the road right away. But Alabama State's going to get the reward for that. So I hope they keep the 16-16 game. We have another one today, but that's what the NCAA tournament was. I mean, if that's what it's going to be to start out, to have bonkers like that, I'm all for it. But we had a buzzer beater and a blowout where you went, oh, I guess that's not the 11-6 matchup, the upset that we're going to have. But North Carolina was impressive last night, man. They weren't messing around.
No, RJ Davis looked absolutely incredible. Their defense looked great, and I'll add a little caveat on top of that to what yesterday was exactly what the NCAA tournament is all about, right? We have these guys, and me being one of them, and people who are on TV who get paid money, right, to watch these games and talk about these games and make the analysis. And all you heard was North Carolina doesn't deserve to be in the tournament. North Carolina isn't good enough. North Carolina, got in because Bubba Cunningham is the athletic director and he's on the chair of the committee and so on and so forth. And what do? They come out and they beat the crap out of San Diego State yesterday. Mm-hmm. I mean, that wasn't even a remote competition between those 2 squads. And so, I mean, you had the thrill of 2 teams you don't hear about going at each other. And then you had the thrill of North Carolina putting the middle finger to everybody and saying, screw you. We are good enough to be in this tournament.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, you guys doubted us. We're here. I think after the last 2 first fours, America's good on ACC versus Mountain West in the first 4 after Colorado State, Virginia last year, and then that North Carolina San Diego State game last night. How about college basketball in the state of Alabama? I'll just make that point. You've got Alabama and Auburn, obviously have been doing their thing all year, and then Troy and Alabama State are in the NCAA tournament. UAB was a game away from the NCAA tournament. There's some good hoop going on in the state of Alabama. So tip of the cap to them, and to Tony Madlock, who's I've heard a lot of good about. He's the head coach at Alabama State. I've heard some good about him from some of my friends in the business. So that was cool to see last night.
Yeah.
That's what you want to see on the first night of the tournament. I mean, Gary put it best. It's the NCAA tournament. You got both ends of the spectrum, blowouts and buzzer beaters in Dayton.
Well, hey, do we need to have a discussion about the Mountain West Conference in the NCAA tournament? They keep laying eggs.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like it'll come eventually. It's gonna get talked about. The Mountain West has had a rough couple of seasons, and this year's iteration of the Mountain West, as someone who has been saying for the last week that the Big Ten raised me, but my heart belongs to the Mountain West. It's not what it's been these last couple years. It is
one of the more sicko statements, and you make a lot of sicko statements. That was disgusting. Your heart belongs to the Mountain West.
It does, Matt. And Gary knows the friends I've got in that league, both in the top of the league and the bottom of the league, and I watch way more of those games than I should. But it's this year's iteration, not what it has been the last couple of years. There's not as much talent as there used to be. San Diego State's a perfect example. That's not the Lamont Butler, San Diego State team that's going to the Final Four. Then they, get the bricks blown off of them, in Dayton last night. But I mean, I feel like it's a discussion every year. At this time, here go all these Mountain West teams, or any of them going to win a game? I think, I think there's at least one of them that I think, definitely no bias, that I hope can get a win on Friday afternoon in Seattle. But yeah, it was only a matter of time before the Mountain West discourse came back to the forefront again.
You guys think there'll be an overreaction to North Carolina now in their next matchup against Ole Miss?
Absolutely. Because they look damn good, and now you're going to have all these people who were banging on the drum for North Carolina, who are North Carolina fans, who either whether they be on TV or whether they be on Twitter, being like, "We proved you guys wrong. Look how good our defense looked. We shut down." We went against a San Diego State team that was one of the best defenses in the country, that everybody heralded about the fact that, hey, San Diego State is going to be able to lock down this inconsistent North Carolina offense, and they went absolutely nuclear. So yeah, when they, in the next round, there's going to be total overreaction about North Carolina being able to make a run, especially after, just Davis looked so good yesterday, and when Davis is hitting, that's when that North Carolina team is hitting. Mountain West has 3 other teams left, by the way, in the NCAA tournament: New Mexico, Colorado State. And Utah State. Should we talk about the fact that if Boise wins the crown, is the Mountain West back? If Boise ends up running the table in Vegas, is that
we shouldn't talk about the crown?
No, I'm calling it College Basketball Firefest until further notice, and I don't think we need to talk about that at length. I'm not going to pretend to be enthused for it in a couple of weeks either. So,
do you know what coaches I was talking to in the last couple of days about the crown? And they know that there's money involved, which, guys might play a little bit harder because there's money on the line. But just the timing of the tournament, the portal opens for college basketball on the 24th. The first game of that isn't until the 31st.
Honest question here. Why would you prioritize the crown in any way, shape, or form over recruiting? Like, why would you dedicate any sort of time or coaches or anything like that toward, hey, we got to get ready for Arizona State, or we got to make sure that we go and play this game, as opposed to going on the road and scouting these guys or recruiting these guys or talking to these guys? It makes absolutely no sense as to why any of these teams would prioritize any sort of preparation for this tournament, which doesn't mean anything other than your players who underperformed, who are already getting paid money, just get paid even more money. It makes zero sense.
Yeah, and they can post on social media that they get, another opportunity to play, and, blessed to have another opportunity. I mean, Sunday in my world was interesting because I had friends in the coaching ranks that learned that they were in the NIT when the NIT posted the graphic. And I got a couple texts like, wait, we're in the NIT? Like, I thought we were done. And it was just this time of year, I mean, the crown. I mean, the timing of the crown makes no sense. It's shameless. It could not be more diametrically opposed to its mere existence. But I mean, coaches this time of year, if you're not in the dance, you know. Belichick said they're on to Cincinnati. You're on to next season. Like if you're not in the NCAA tournament, you should be on to next season when it comes to roster construction and eyes forward and not trying to keep this season dragging longer than it already needs to be.
So let me pose this to you guys. Also, you got to remember before teams play in the crown for the most part, like Nebraska will be off 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean we're gonna watch and we'll talk about it because we can't quit it. But it's, like when Nebraska blew an opportunity to get in the NCAA tournament in the late 90s with a really good basketball team, and Tyronn Lue was leading that team. And they went to the NIT, and it was a letdown because they were an NCAA team, but they blew their opportunity. They went the NIT and won it. The reaction was really, really different back then of, okay, hey, young team, didn't work out. But then the NIT back then meant something. Like if let's say Nebraska goes on a run and they win the crown, do we get angry or do we celebrate it?
Angry.
Yeah.
Angry. It means zero, without a doubt, because, and I'll throw a couple reasons why out there. Number one, the crown is rooted in everything that people currently hate in college sports in general. And what it's rooted in is just making more money and ruining things or veering away from things that have been tradition in order just to make more money. No one ever stood up and said, hey, I have a problem with the NIT. We need to change the NIT. No one ever said that. This is just rooted in the fact that Fox wanted to pair up with other conferences and say, hey, we're going to put together our own little thing with the top teams in order to get, more sponsorships and better viewings and just make more money. And then, hey, on top of that, you'll be able to get more money. So that's number one. This tournament is rooted in everything that people can't stand about what's been happening in college sports. But on top of that, and I kind of talked about it yesterday with Caleb, with Nebraska specifically, how many of these guys are going to be on this team next year? To the point where you're going to be like, you're not really going to be looking forward to seeing any of these guys play, even if some of them do come back and play well in this tournament, because a lot of them are going to be gone, right? It's just going to be like, damn, okay, great. Jawan Gary and Bryce Williams, and they look great. Too bad we won't get to be able to see them play this season. Man, it would have been really, really nice to see this team play at a high level in the actual NCAA tournament. I mean, that is what the reaction is going to be. Yeah. Because if they go out and they play really, really hard and they look great, they're going to be like, really? More money is what you needed in order to have some motivation to play as opposed to just competing? Seriously?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's going to be making the excuses like it's not about the crown, it's about the crown practices. Like when it's bowl time around here, like it's not about the pinstripe bowl, it's about the pinstripe bowl practices. We're not happy about the crown. We're happy about the crown practices. Really going to get those red shirt guys going for next year.
We're going to get Jawan and Bryce ready for Turkey.
Hey, we've talked way too much about the crown. We need to talk about two teams in the Big O that are in the NCAA tournament.
I want to talk about this with you. You talked about it with St. Francis and Alabama State. And I know that people, when they saw, and everyone kind of knew before they saw it, right? Because they were the absolute last team to get announced. But I'm sure that there might have been, at least from a fan perspective, a damn St. John's in Providence. That is a really, really tough task, right? To go against a team that looks arguably better than anyone in the country right now, maybe other than Florida. Like, that, you definitely have that negative reaction toward that. But at the same time, with what we saw yesterday and the attention those two teams had, there's got to be a positiveness of like, just from an optics standpoint of like, man, Omaha is going to be national television, playing a media darling, like going to probably be the most watched and most important game on at the time. Like, it is an absolutely incredible opportunity, for them tomorrow. And then on top of that, you guys are a damn good team. Like, I honestly, like, you're a damn good team. And I would not be surprised, honestly. I mean, a little surprised if we wake up in the morning and Omaha shocks the world. Like, it is one of the greatest opportunities that any mid-major athletic team could really have, to be on that stage and to be able to upset a team that has so much attention right now. Like, what is the vibe with you guys right now? How are the guys feeling? I mean, what's the excitement like?
Oh, it's through the roof. Like, yesterday was really cool. And it's been cool that and you guys saw this firsthand on Sunday, the people that showed up at Mammal Hall. It's been really cool for the Omaha community and the Omaha Maverick fans that have supported this. And this might be the turning point in the athletic department where, okay, let's go across the board, big time athletics. Let's get there. Let's be the best of the best when it comes to mid-major programs. And they already are off to a good start. I mean, a lot of their sports are doing really, really well with really good coaches, but it's been a transition. Like the program is acting like a real basketball program. And now they play a real good team. I think the vibes are high. I mean, anything can happen. So in 2 verse 15s, there have been 11 times that the 15 has beat the 2. 11 times, they've lost 145 times. Just want everybody to know that 12 years ago, there was a special team that holds a place in my heart, beat the champions out of the Big East. They were called Georgetown. Florida Gulf Coast University, as a 15, beat a number 2. That was before a 15 beating a 2 became really cool. People are like, oh my God, it can happen. Well, it can happen. Then I'm going to give you another little nugget. And this isn't to say St. John's is who they are. I mean, St. John's is a friggin' beast. And there's a lot of things they do that will cause problems for Omaha. But since we've gone to the field of 64, expanded to at least 64, 39 times there has been an unranked team at the beginning of the year, that has either been a 1 or a 2 seed that has not made it through the first weekend. So it can happen. And when he was at Louisville, Patino lost a 3-14 game. Remember, St. John's roster has about as many guys that have NCAA tournament experience as Omaha's.
Oh,
so anything can happen. It's just you can't get buried right away. And but here's the thing: like we've seen this when the underdog in an arena all of a sudden has a chance, and who people start rooting for. This is the highest ticket price of any of the 8 first-round sites is here in Providence for the night session, because not only do you have KU in Arkansas, but you got St. John's. There's St. John's fans everywhere here in Providence. Okay, hotels are sold out, so it's not like if Omaha is that plucky underdog and they keep the game close, it's going to be people rooting for Omaha. It's going to be an angry building, just like Creighton saw on Saturday night. It's basically a road game. But with that said, the mindset is good. I mean, you're not going to tell guys, oh, man, you're 18.5-point underdogs. You're a 15 seed. You got no chance. You know what? They told them that when they were 4-9, and now they're in the NCAA tournament. But it's been whatever happens tomorrow night. This has been a transformation of Omaha athletics, where the Omaha athletic program has found their niche. And I think there are so many people that are getting the attention they deserve, whether they be in the basketball program or the athletic department, on the fine work that they do. So it's been great. But there's none of us that are on this trip that are like, oh, man, I can't wait to come home on Friday. I mean, I'll tell you, I brought the big suitcase.
Hey,
I didn't bring the small suitcase. I brought big suitcase.
Do the reverse Shaquille O'Neal where you guys, we're packing 2 suits. We're packing 2 suits for this road trip. We're not just packing 1 suit, all right? We're going to have multiple stays here. Hey, I want to throw this out too. 2021, 2022, 2023. Those are 3 of the last 4 NCAA tournaments where a 15 seed has upset a 2 seed. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's been happening as of late. And there are more. And, I know we talk a lot about the SEC is getting better and the Big Ten needs to, up their game or whatever. But mid-majors just in general have been upping their game as well. I mean, the level of basketball just across the board, especially this season, has been high.
And that's a great point, Matt. And don't you guys think the portal has changed things? We always talk about the portal hurts the mid-majors, and it does. But they also benefit from some guys that aren't getting enough minutes at the upper level that come down to a mid-major, and that's where they should have been from the jump.
Well, the great thing, too, about college basketball as opposed to college football is that college basketball gives mid-majors a legitimate shot in their playoffs. They give them legitimate opportunities to show themselves. And so you can look at guys who are, lower down the depth chart in higher programs, and they can look at mid-majors and go, man, that's a good coach. He's done a lot of winning. I can go there. I can play a lot, become better, and then I can go back to a Power 5 team and make a ton of money, right? And that's just kind of like the benefit of what NIL has brought to college basketball. And once again, like you look up and down this bracket, guys, there's a lot of 13s and 4s and 12s and 5s and just 14s and 3s where you're kind of looking at these matchups and you're like, man, like there might be a lot of double-digit upsets, and it's just because of the higher quality of some of these mid-major teams.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that on Monday, Matt. I don't know, like as I've gone through this bracket, gosh, it just and I know last year what there were 6-11 seeds or higher that won.
Yeah,
Or I guess you'd say lower seeds. 6-11 seeds or lower that won. There's just a lot of chalk this year. I
it
just
is.
I can't I want to pick upsets, but I'm thinking, damn, it get you by the time you make it close to San Antonio, you're like, man, this bracket looks like chalk. I
It's
hope it's not the case.
it's not chalk in the first round for me, but once we get past the Sweet 16, it's like, damn, I really do have just ones and twos and threes.
Yeah.
Like that's all I got.
Yeah, that's what I've seen too. Because I think the sport, like the playing field, has been leveled by the portal, but college basketball this year is still fairly top heavy. When you think about like the teams that are on the 1 and 2 line, they are kind of, I mean, they are still a step above. So I haven't filled out a bracket fully yet, which I know will shock some people. But when I get to that point, it's going to look rather top heavy with who's going the distance.
But another thing to consider too, while we have this conversation about the benefit for mid majors and NIL, you also have to look at the other side of the coin in the regard that the reason why it is top heavy is also because of NIL, because you have all these talented guys who in years past would have said, sayonara, I'm going to the NBA because that's where I can make money. And now you have these top guys and top programs saying, "Oh, you're gonna pay me $1.5 million, or you're gonna pay me close to $1 million to stick around, to be in college, to dominate at a level I already know I can dominate. I'm gonna have an opportunity to get more ads. I can continue to build my brand even before I get into the NBA, which in it itself is a crapshoot to a certain extent, especially for most of the guys that aren't at the top of the draft. I mean, this we look at name, image, and likeness and the money that's flowing in. I feel like we always look at it from a football perspective, but it has had a ton of profound impacts, not only at the top of basketball, but also toward what we would consider the back of basketball. And I think, it's not great for the middle, but it is entertaining just in general. But hey, this is, like I said, this is the greatest week in sports in general. This week in March, where all we get to do is watch college basketball. All we get to do is talk about college basketball. We've had a little bit of local flavor with the Omaha Mavericks. Hey, we'll have plenty of local flavor to come with the Creighton Blue Jays, who are, Greg McDermott said himself yesterday, he can't believe that Louisville is an 8 seed. And frankly, when they flash across the screen on Sunday, no one could believe it either. But they've built something along the way in Creighton. They're trying to cash out on it against Louisville, continue the run that they've been on the last couple of years. And we'll talk about whether or not they can do that. Hey, don't go anywhere. You're listening to Gary Matt here on 1620 The Zone.
Hey, when you're replacing your roof, look to the MVPs in Omaha. Pat and his gang have been there since 1996. We had a rough last year when it came to storms, so a lot of people needed to have their roofs fixed. And you saw these fly-by-the-night, out-of-state people come in. They did a shoddy job. You know what? Those people that had the poor job that was done on their place, they ended up calling Moose Roofing. And you should be calling Moose Roofing every time you need to deal with the most important asset of your home, your roof. Moose Roofing, again, they've been in business since 1996 right here in Omaha. The people that work here are local. They are here before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. Highly durable lifetime roofing solutions, ventilation expertise, and excellent service. They will work individually to get to know you and your needs. And as you move through the process, one thing I'm hearing from people that deal with Moose Roofing is the one thing they like that is different from anybody else is the insurance process has become even more difficult. Moose Roofing, their service team, they're going to navigate that with you. They'll take care of it. They're locally owned, top-notch reputation. If you don't believe it, look at all the reviews and then drive around your neighborhood and go, that roof looks great. I bet it was from Moose Roofing. If you need your roof taken care of before the storms kick in, especially what's happening today and what's going to happen into the spring and summer, don't hesitate. Contact Moose Roofing today online at mooseroofing.com. That's Moose Roofing online at mooseroofing.com.
While Matt gets situated here,
I'm
we
good,
we best tell you some actual news. The Highway Patrol, Nebraska, State Patrol, whatever. Anyway, I-80 closed from Lincoln to Lexington, and that's so. If you're going west, don't. If you're going anywhere, don't go back to bed. Tell them the zone said you could go back to bed. You can reemerge from your cocoon tomorrow when it's supposed to be a little warmer, a little sunnier, a little drier.
Let me just go back into it. The concern here, by the way, it was rainy, it was windy, it was haily, it was wet on the roads.
You should see the parking lot right now.
It is going to start snowing, for those of you who don't know, which means that things could get slippery, things could get icy. Let me tell you something right now. I know that I've made fun of this city and Lincoln's snow patrol and snow cleanup in the past.
They're our friends.
This is turning out to be probably the worst one we've had in the stretch of ones that we've had over the last couple of months. So
hey, they're out and ready. I saw them on the ramps on Dodge. They're ready to fight the snow.
There, but we're already closing I-80. It's not even 8 o'clock yet. The snow hasn't even really started to pour down. Like, it's pouring down now, but it's only going to get worse.
Creighton fans, that's Lincoln to Lexington, Nebraska, not Kentucky. You may proceed with your trip to go watch the Jays.
Who would have thought?
Be careful.
This is a very odd occurrence, by the way, on the show where Gary Sharp is on the road and somehow we have worse weather than wherever he is situated. But to be fair, oftentimes he's in the Dakotas in negative weather and with a bunch of snow that's absolutely piling in on top of him. But he's out in Providence. He joined the show earlier today. Hey, don't forget to go back and listen to what we were talking about earlier in the show. Anywhere you get your podcast, we did a little bit of North Carolina, a little bit of San Diego State, a little bit of the Mavericks on top of just talking about everything that went down.
Matt, that's just sports. We have Jacob here today. That's why you should go back and listen to the show.
Let me get there.
That's the only reason you should listen
with
today.
The Indiana job being filled out and the coaching carousel, which we talked about with Mr. Jacob Bigelow, who is our incredibly special guest today. We cannot believe actually came out 250th and Dodge actually talked to us. Oh my God, the amount of months that we've been trying to get this done. Hey, don't forget, we do, as always, on Wednesdays, we'll have John Walker coming up at 9 o'clock of the Omaha World Herald. He'll be talking about the Jays, and at 9:40, we have Brandon Vogel. But before we get to John Walker, we will have a very, very special guest, Mike Rutherford of the Card Chronicle, who covers the Louisville Cardinal basketball team, will be on to join us at 8:40. So we will give you an awesome matchup preview between the Cardinals and the Blue Jays at 8:40, then followed up by John Walker. We'll break it down ourselves after that. Then we'll head right into Brandon Vogel. Hey, as always, today's lineup is powered by the Rooferys at John Higgins Weather Guard. And if you want to reach out to us and tell us any of your hot takes, what you think about the show, what you think about we're talking about, don't forget to email us, Matt at 1620thezone.com, Jimmy at 1620thezone.com. The Equitable Bank inbox is where you can email us. Hey, Equitable Bank, they take banking personally. And on top of that, if you want to reach out to us via Twitter, don't forget to tweet out at us at the JTech Construction Line Twitter at Matt McMedia, MattMcmedia, and
you can get me at Jacob A. Bigelow on there if you want to, fire off some. You want to talk? Fire off anything at me.
People know your Twitter handle
Line's
after
open.
last week.
Yeah, line's open. If you any thoughts, concerns, questions, debates, whatever, shoot them my way. I'll gladly accept them.
Iowa JD tweets in at the JTech Construction Line Twitter feed. What should be scary for Indiana is that they are fishing in the same coach's pond as Iowa, and they are a quote unquote blue blood. I will disagree with that because Iowa was fishing in Indiana's pool, if we're being honest here. Okay. Like, Darren DeVries is one hell of a coach. It would have been by far the best hire that Iowa could make. Unfortunately for them, they have some, financial issues that they have to, bludgeon through, especially before revenue share comes up, just because they have to, pay off. They got to fire Fran. They got to pay off him. They got to pay off the staff. Then they would have to buy out Darren DeVries from West Virginia, which would be around $4.6 million, which definitely ended up, according to Pete Thamel, was a barrier of entry for Iowa, and which is probably why Iowa wasn't able to lock this up, period, end of story, especially considering the fact that it just seemed like DeVries was a shoo-in at some points. There's Beth Getz has a lot to do at Iowa. I mean, there's going to be a ton of trials and tribulations, especially in this process heading into next season, because of the fact that, you still are going to have to operate with your own funds and with NIL dollars until you get to around June and July when revenue sharing is supposed to kick in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's, Indiana and Iowa, they, based on who you listen to, they were, fishing in the same pool, whether it be the McCollum talk last week or the DeVries talk, and DeVries ends up getting the IU job. Lost in the shuffle yesterday for Iowa. You and I were texting back and forth yesterday about the Pete Nakos on 3 article about, about collectives and resources and all that. And the quote about Iowa was, Iowa's best players are making around 300,000. That's bottom of the Big Ten. And then Patrick McCaffrey, son of Fran, comes out on the app formerly known as Twitter and tweets at Peyton Sanford, "Don't you wish you were making this kind of money?"
Yeah.
And that just adds to what was a pretty rough day for Iowa basketball yesterday. And I think they were making jokes about, if I was making that kind of money, I could have bought a better driver, that sort of thing. But
could have gone golfing more.
Could have played more golf. But Iowa
didn't have to go to the Iowa City municipal courses in order to get around in.
I don't think
go to a country club. Or
something like that. But I think we mentioned it earlier in the show. I mean, it's Iowa, they're gonna have to look in the mirror. It's like, if we want to go all in on basketball, what are the steps that we need to take from a resource perspective, from a hiring perspective? And the focus now shifts to the guy coaching in Des Moines, whose team will take the floor in Wichita tomorrow night, and Ben McCollum and Drake.
Yeah, and on top of that, with all of the mud that Iowa has been dragged through over the last 24 hours, they still came to Pinnacle Bank Arena and ended the season of your Nebraska Cornhuskers, who will now be playing in the incredibly prestigious Crown, which we are refusing to talk about anymore on this radio show, at least until it gets brought up again, and then we can moan and complain about it.
I'll make one last point about the Iowa Nebraska thing. Iowa Nebraska thing. Peyton Sanford was playing hurt for most of the year. He talked to the Iowa media after they were knocked out of the Big Ten tournament. He had a broken wrist, a dislocated shoulder. Like, he was going through it all year. So he was underpaid and hurt. And they still beat Nebraska twice. So that's how the season went.
And they still came back from 15 and beat them in Iowa City. And they still dominated them in Lincoln. Rick Jones on Twitter tweets out, "Indiana job better than the West Virginia job. But I wonder if the embarrassment by West Virginia governor and AD or attorney general played a role in DeVries' decision to leave." Let me look at this USA Today article real quick, and I'm pretty sure Darren DeVries' contract should be in here. So DeVries was making $2.9 million at West Virginia. Now, his buyout was $4.6 million. We're yet to know what the contract details will be from Bloomington, and I don't think we'll know that for a little bit.
It's getting introduced today, so there may be details today around 11 a.m. Central Time is the introductory presser out in Bloomington.
He's making 2.9. We said earlier in the show, Mike Woodson is making 4.2. I anticipate that DeVries will probably fall in between Fred Hoiberg, who's making 4.75. And maybe Matt Painter area. Matt Painter's making 4.85. So, it's going to be more than likely, if you're just going off of Woodson's number, it's going to be a massive pay raise for DeVries. But on top of that, I was thinking about this yesterday. It was funny. I was like, man, you think West Virginia being snubbed played a big role in DeVries leaving? You think him thinking, man, I'm in the Big 12. Maybe I got to get to one of the Power 2 conferences. Like, maybe that would be better for me if I ended up going to the Big 10 or the SEC, because, I want to make NCAA tournaments and I want to be in the dance. And, he's been in the dance as not only just a head coach, but an assistant coach plenty of times in his career. And, Doug McDermott said yesterday in a great interview, there's nothing like being in the tournament. That feeling never runs out. And I was thinking maybe West Virginia being snubbed had something to do with it. At the same time, Indiana got snubbed too.
Yeah.
They were in the same exact boat. So I don't know. I just think that what it comes down to is that Indiana just has a bigger war chest and they got more tradition.
Yeah, they're in a different tax bracket than Iowa and West Virginia. And I'll say this about West Virginia. West Virginia's got, sneaky good basketball support. That's one of the more like there's if you win there, they'll love you forever. And they they're still it's a very passionate fan base out there. I've had some direct lines to the previous coaching situation at that university with Huggins. But that's a sneaky good support. But I mean, it's just a different level, I said a different tax bracket, but for IU, I'm interested to see the details when it comes out. But I mean, it's I think this would have happened regardless of West Virginia's tournament status. I think it all kind of just clicked. Indiana misses the field on Sunday. West Virginia misses the field. The early talk was West Virginia may still go to the Crown. They're not listed in the Crown. A day later, we get the news dump of we get the Goodman tweet, then we get the news dump, and it all kind of just the dominoes started falling on Sunday. Once their name wasn't called for the selection show.
So the SEC got 14 teams in the tournament. The Big Ten got 8. The Big 12 got 7, which is actually kind of low for the Big 12. Big East got 5. ACC got 4. The 3 kind of big jobs that are up right now in the coaching carousel are West Virginia, and Villanova. Could you make the argument that West Virginia is the best job out of those 3, despite the fact that Virginia and Villanova definitely have more of a historical background or tradition? Because
you could.
You look at the ACC, it was bad this year. The ACC was bad. The
ACC is also a time bomb. It's a ticking time bomb.
And it goes off in 2031.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's period, end of story. And you look at the Big East, and I respect the Big East. The Big East is top heavy. The Big East does not have the depth throughout the entirety of the conference that the SEC or the Big Ten or the Big 12 has, which definitely does play against them for multiple reasons. And let me tell you something right now. We talk about Villanova and Villanova needing to get this hire right because Villanova needs to be good for the good of the Big East. But Chris Holtmann and DePaul being good for the Big East is another factor that you got to throw in there as well. Because if the floor of the Big East can raise, the ceiling will get higher. And when the ceiling gets higher, that's how you get more bids, right? But it's just an interesting conversation to have because of you would never to say that West Virginia could potentially be a better job to have when you're considering the 2 other programs we're talking about have won national championships as of late. Sounds like a crazy sentence, but with the landscape of where college sports is at, and I'm not saying it is. I'm not going to act as if I'm an expert, and I can tell you right now that West Virginia for sure is a better job than those 2. But it definitely is a conversation to have considering just the massive fall off the ACC had and the fact that, I do think with the lower parts of the Big East being not good and there's really not too much hope for them getting any better, you would rather position yourself in the Big 12 conference with a pretty good NIL support from West Virginia than maybe trying to build up those 2 other teams and build up those 2 other conferences.
Yeah, the Villanova job, you're going to get a bigger piece of the rev share pie, though.
That's
because Villanova has FCS football, and
point.
you don't have to worry about football money. So Villanova probably gets the nod, but West Virginia's probably this. I mean, it makes a good case to be in that debate, and what was the other job? Virginia? Yeah, that's a tough spot. That's a tough spot right now between the academic stuff at UVA, between you never want to be the guy after the guy coming after Tony, and then the ACC just being a ticking time bomb. I mean, I got some insight on the the Florida State coaching search, when that was going on a couple weeks ago, and Florida. I mean, you want to hear about the financials of an unserious basketball program. I can tell you all about Florida State, who was the max they were willing to offer a basketball coach for his contract was in the neighborhood of $2 million. A salary pool to put a staff together was around 1.5, and even after rev share, their NIL is expected to be around $1 million this past year. It's expected to decrease once rev share is out, because people are like, well, rev share, why do we have to donate? And their yearly resources is going to be around $2 million.
Yeah,
$2 million and that's not enough. And they followed the we're going to hire an ACC guy, not an ACC, an NBA guy who's an alum, and hope that draws up enthusiasm. But I mean, the ACC right now, we talked about it in the last segment with Carolina. I mean, they've got Duke, Carolina, Louisville, carrying the flag in hoops, football. I mean, that's that whole situation. I mean, it's just, that's a tinderbox. Like, it's just waiting for the match to make it all just blow up in our faces.
Hey, someone got disrespected yesterday, and I will not stand for it. We're going to talk about it in the next segment. And real quick, great Pete Thamel article about the NIL and basketball that everyone should go read. That number to be kind of in the top 25 conversation, the NIL, $4.5 million. For Florida State to be toward the half end of that, no. Not good for them and not good for that conference. Hey, we got a lot to get through. Don't go anywhere. Listen to 1620 The Zone.
Do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? Well, I do. Trust me. You can win with Underdog. I need to check and see how my baseball picks going right now. Nothing like waking up at 4 a.m. to place a bet. Yeah, this place has corrupted me. The Zone, that is, not Underdog. Underdog, I'm thanking. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like points, assists, rebounds, and more. You can play with as little as $1. Good for radio people. And if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your hoops knowledge. This week on Underdog, what do you think? Well, okay, I got Cubs Dodgers, but it's really about the tournament, the basketball, lots of it. And I got 2 games to choose from tonight. Download the Underdog app and sign up now using promo code ZONE to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on all the fun when you sign up with promo code ZONE. Claim your special offer today and get up to 1,000 times and $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. It's that easy. Must be 19 plus in Nebraska. Present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org.
Hey, this is not just the weekend to bum around. All right. This is not just the weekend to sit back in your chair and enjoy the basketball. This is the weekend where if you like to gamble a little bit, if you like to partake, I'm not forcing you to, but if you like to make a little cha-ching, this is it. I mean, you're going to have all these spreads. You're going to have all these games. You're going to have all these opportunities. And I don't know if you've heard, Mr. Bigelow, about my board. Have you heard about the Matt McMaster board at all? Turn your microphone on. It's right there. Right there, the red button. There you go. Now your microphone's on.
There it is.
This is the key to being on radio. The key to being on radio is turning off your microphone and turning on your microphone. I have a big board. Okay? I love a board. You look at the board, you wake up in the morning, it's 4:00 in the morning for me. I look at my phone, I go through the spreads, I go, I like that one, I like that one, I don't like that one. I'll tell you something right now. We are going to have a live and living color in person board tomorrow. I am going. Wow. I am bearing the lead now, but will not be a surprise. You'll see it. It'll be on its score. It'll be sitting right here for the next 2 days. We'll be traveling across the casinos in Nebraska and maybe even Iowa, if need be, in order to make sure that we are cha-chinging this week. Do you have a pick? Have you looked at any of the spreads? Do you have a pick for me?
I don't have a spread for you, but I've been dabbling in maybe like a title future. Like,
okay.
Would you take a title?
I will take a title, dude. I will take anything as long as it has your signed, sealed endorsement.
Yeah, I kind of, if I was a gambling man, I know taking the one seed is, you never want to do that. I'd sprinkle some on a Houston title future.
Okay.
And then my sleeper Final Four pick, and that sleeper, they're a 3 seed. Texas Tech.
I was about to say
Texas Tech Final Four future.
I was about to say it.
Yeah, a Texas Tech Final Four future.
Look, they are a really, really good offense. They got a great coach, and what they have more than anything is like they got good depth, but man, they got a superstar in that team, and JT Top. JT is one of the best players, not only in the Big 12, but in the country in general. And when you kind of have that great mix of like offense and great offense and a good coach, but then also have that, bang, here's our guy, we can give him the ball. It reminds me a little bit of Jarrett Culver not too long ago, when the last time that Texas Tech went to the Final Four with that Chris Beard team, with Matt Mooney. And so Texas Tech is one of those weird teams where they're definitely not the 1 or the 2, and you're not having people talk about them being chalk or anything like that, but being that weird kind of 3 seed, people always look at that seed as an opportunity to separate themselves within the brackets. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons they may not be getting as much love. But I love that sleeper from you. Hey, coming up next, a little bit of a surprise here. We got a guy who's got all the picks. He's got all the sleepers. He's going to help you make the cha-ching. We haven't seen him since the Super Bowl, but ladies and gentlemen, he's back. It's not Steve Austin. It's Lee Sterling coming up next here on Gary and Matt. This is Hypnotize here. And that was one hell of an intro by St. John's in the Big East tournament when they came out to this song. One guy who's going to try and hypnotize Vegas into making us a little bit of money this week is Mr. Lee Sterling, who's got all the picks. Lee, how you doing, my man? Good to hear from you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm good. Just getting ready for the home opener for the Marlins. I don't know if you saw this. They're not advertising the game. It's all about you stay afterwards and see the fireworks and a concert by Flo Rida and Louis Fonsi.
For the Marlins?
Yeah.
Are you going to it, Lee? Are you a big Flo Rida guy?
No. You're kidding me.
What do you mean? I don't know. Lee,
I haven't seen a game in 3 years. I've not gone to a game in 3 years.
Hey, are you going to any of these NCAA tournament games? You making a trip out anywhere to see some teams?
No, but I actually might go to the Final Four in San Antonio.
San Antonio, great.
Ooh, take me with you. I'll go home.
I was about to say, great around this time of year. Let's talk about it, Lee. You give me the breakdown. Who are your upsets? Who are your sleepers? Who do you think you'll see play in the Final Four in San Antonio? Give it all to me, and hopefully we can be a little bit richer heading into next week.
Okay, so a couple underrated teams I think are Arkansas. Getting 4.5 points against Kansas. I don't think this is Kansas's year. I think Landon Donaldson, unless he can score 20-plus points, have 10, 12 rebounds, a few assists, and a few blocks, I think Arkansas plus 4.5 is a live dog. And my most underrated team, probably Colorado State. And the odds makers has figured this out.
Yeah.
I think this might be the first 12 seed that's actually a favorite over a 5 seed. Yeah. Colorado State's laying 2.5 points. Have you guys seen them yet this year?
I have. I've watched a little bit of them on TV. We're with co-host Jacob Bigelow, who actually is a massive Colorado State fan.
He is an expert on the Rams.
A lot of games this year. Jacob, they're pretty damn good.
Yeah, they're pretty fun, man. They've been on a heater for the last month or so, and winning 10 straight to get into the dance. They flipped a switch, Coach Medved and company, and they're on the ultimate heater. And like you said, Lee, for a 12 to, I think they opened as a 2.5 point favorite over a 5 and they're both coming off of conference tournament wins. But America's getting ready to learn about the Rams on Friday, in my opinion.
I agree, and not only winning, I mean dominating. And so I like them. And Vegas usually gets it right. If you're thinking, give me some Memphis as a 5 seed plus the points, don't fall for the trap. Maybe another underrated team, UC San Diego, getting 2.5. You're saying just 2.5 against the Big Ten champs, Michigan. Well, I heard the Michigan players got fitted for rings right after the game. And I think they can tell you their ring size. They probably couldn't name 2 starters on the UC San Diego team. Not San Diego State, UC San Diego. But this San Diego team won 30 of 34. They have one of the most efficient defenses out there. I think that's a live dog. Now, going by region, the toughest region, in my opinion, is the West.
Yeah.
I mean, Florida, St. John's playing well with Rick Pitino coaching them. Texas Tech with New Mexico transfer J.J. Toppin in Maryland, and then throw in, obviously, Colorado State and Arkansas. It is really good. I mean, even Missouri and Drake are strong. But I think that Florida's going to find a way behind Walter Clayton, who's red hot, at least 20 points in 4 of the last 5 games. And the only thing that concerns me a little is their coach doesn't have a tournament win. Okay. But I like Florida to advance. I'm not going to go Jay Billis, all number ones, which he does almost every year.
Huh.
I think there is only probably 6 or 7 teams that can win it all. In the South, I'm going to take Michigan State. I think it's going to come down to them and Auburn. Do not like Iowa State without those injuries, and Texas A&M's offense. I mean, their offensive metrics have been horrendous the last 6 games. In the East, it's Duke. No one's even close.
Sure.
Alabama can't play defense. Nick Saban could probably help them out. And number 3 and number 4, Wisconsin and Arizona, they just don't have the ceiling to play with Duke, who is so good offensively and the best defensive team in college basketball. And then the Midwest, I like Houston and Phi Slamma Jamma too. So I know that Tormund Lipsey will probably not play the first weekend, and we'll probably see a Tennessee-Kentucky matchup. But when they lost 2 years ago, great defense, They have another great defense this year, but they can finally shoot the basketball. So their offense is good, really good guard play, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, they shoot free throws. They couldn't shoot free throws at all last couple of years. They didn't have anyone above 70% last few years. They have one starter above 70% free throw shooting percentage, a second above 80, and a third above 90%. So I've got Duke and Houston on one side, Michigan State and Florida on the other.
Okay.
I'm going to take a flyer. I'm going to take Houston, the Phi Slamma Jamma 2 here, plus 650.
I like that.
To cut down the nets. And if they do it, you guys want to go with me and bet on Houston, we can meet up in May as we head to St. Bart's.
Absolutely. Put a little more than just a $10 unit on it, Lee. Hey,
right.
before I let you go here, I gotta know. By the way, Lee Sterling from Paramount Sports. I know it's, it's one of those weird things where it's like, I'm not going to have you go out on a limb and say, hey, a 15 is going to beat a 2 or a 14 is going to beat a 3. But like, are there any of those high seed first round matchups where you do kind of like the spread, where you're interested in a 15 or you're interested in a 14 or maybe even a 16?
Not to win the game. Okay. I can't see that happening.
Sure.
But, there are some games where I think Vegas is kind of telling you that you might want to look at the underdog High Point.
Okay.
Most people couldn't even tell you it's in North Carolina. Like High Point against Purdue, I think Purdue might have a game. This might be a 1 or 2 possession game. And give me some McNeese State.
All
McNeese
right.
State, the Cowboys with Will Wade. So we've won 7 of the last 8 tournaments. So hopefully we keep it going. We went 10-0 in the NFL playoffs, first time ever. We've had a couple 8-2 NFL playoff runs, but great season, including our 4th win in the last 5 years in the NFL playoffs. We won 4 of the last 5 championship games in college basketball. They want to get every game from tonight. We've got a selection on the first 4. You can get every game for the next 3 weeks, just $197.
Ooh.
Just one place, yeah. And I'll even throw in the UFC card from London. $197 is going to get you 45 selections next 3 weeks. Just one place, ParamountSports.com.
That is one hell of a deal, Lee. And like you said, you've been on fire. This is the time of year where you're at your best in the NFL playoffs. You absolutely killed it for us back then, too. Hey, thank you so much for jumping on for us all the time. Really appreciate it. We'll see you in the future, all right, my man?
Okay, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Lee. Paramount Sports. Let me tell you something right now. Am I off? Let me tell you something right now.
You're on. You've never been off.
We've got.
You've been on all morning.
Appreciate it. When it comes to gambling here, we got some experts, right? We do. Brian Edwards will be on tomorrow at 9:45. We get a surprise Lee Sterling coming in, handing you out some great picks. Hey, tomorrow.
I mean, did you see my face light up when he said
Dude,
Colorado
he's on track
State?
with you.
Did you see my face light up?
State. He likes the Houston pick as well.
Yeah.
I would have flipped my ass if he said, you know what, a sleeper I really like is Texas Tech and JT Toppin. That would have been on top of it. Czar Jacob Bigelow over here. Actually, a quite young handicapper that we have
also known as a knower of ball.
Yes.
Like John Malkovich in Rounders. Hey, it is tournament season.
Mm-hmm.
And you are, as a self-proclaimed college basketball sicko. Okay? I've kind of throughout the week, I've been sprinkling my picks here and there, teams that I like, teams that I dislike. I'm fading the Cyclones. I don't like the injuries that they have. Keyshawn Gilbert out. That's not good for them. They didn't look good in the Big 12 tournament, and the team that they didn't look good against, who looks good right now, is BYU. I think that, 9 of their last 10 games, couple against ranked opponents. They've been on fire. I really like what they're doing over there. The Mormons/Cougars, kind of the same thing.
Can't spell more money without Mormon, right?
Nope, not at all. And wait till AJ Dabansa.
Yep.
I'm good. I thought I was going to butcher his name, which is why I just let you take that over. They're going to be good again next year. They got something building over there in Utah. I think that they're really going to build some momentum. I've thrown it out there. So in the last, I think it's 39 teams, 37 or 39 teams have been a number 1 or number 2 seed. And they were unranked heading into the year.
Mhm.
None of those teams have ever made the Final Four. And in the last 4 years, none of them have gotten to the Sweet 16. I like the Bryant Bulldogs against the Michigan State Spartans.
Really?
I do. I think I'm not going money line, but I think Bryant with the spread, I think their spread now is up to 17.5. Let me go and check that right now. I like Bryant. I like Bryant a lot. And there will be a couple more that we'll throw out tomorrow when Gary's on, and I'll show the board and everything like that. But Jacob, we only got you. We only got you for a little bit here. Give me your preview. Who do you like? Who do you dislike? You like Texas Tech. You don't mind a flyer in Houston. What do you think about the middle seeds? What about the double-digit first-round matchups? Let's just go back and forth here. Give us the Jacob B. Bigelow NCAA tournament preview.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the first 2 days. I mean, we're so close, fellas. We're so close to the best ladies too. We're so close, people, listeners, everyone. The best 2 days on the sports calendar. It is what paid time off was invented for.
Which is exactly why you are here.
These next 2 days.
Months ago, you told your work. You go, I ain't coming. You're gonna cue the Magic Johnson meme. I ain't gonna be here.
Yeah, no, and it's what this Thursday and Friday are all about. When I look at like these brackets, like I don't have like 7 or 8 different of them. I do one on paper, old school, old fashioned.
People are doing this. This is more of the trend. There's no more of these high stake rollers who are like, no, I'm going to do 8 different brackets and I'm going to try and win as many tourneys. No, you stick to your pick.
Oh, and you're talking to a guy who was like, a young bookie, like taking people's cash in middle school, and like everyone had their paper, and we had the pile of brackets. We had the pile of brackets in the locker. We had the pile of money in the locker.
I did a survivor pool in 7th grade for the NFL.
Survivor pool in 7th grade.
I did a 7th grade NFL survivor pool.
I believe it.
We took $5 each from everybody. And I organized it where I told people, you just pick one team.
Were you the muscle, Jacob?
Hell no.
So you had muscle to be like, hey, the money or the protractor takes your finger.
So, we didn't have many enforcers back at Buffett Middle School in the day. We didn't have many enforcers walking around. We were a real small time small time operation.
I actually got in a lot of trouble because someone brought home $150 after winning the survivor pool and a bunch of 5s, and parents were like, "Why the hell do you have this wad of cash?" They're like, "Matt McMaster ran an NFL survivor pool."
Good for you. You were meant for this business.
I was. People think I wasn't. I didn't choose this business.
Hey,
this
Matthew,
business
what would you like to be
me,
when you grow up?
A gambler.
There's only one business for me, ma'am.
Winning. The business of winning.
With a side of radio.
I was playing cornhole at 7 years old, setting lines against the 2nd graders. But sicko time
$5. The boy over in the front row wets his pants.
What are you going to do in Seattle? So you're going to go in Seattle. You're going to watch Colorado State, but you have to find a hub. Like you got to find a little bar.
Yeah, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm really just like flying by the seat of my pants. It's like this is a short notice trip.
You're flying Southwest too. So in recent,
and the weather today, it could be a long next day or so for me personally. This afternoon.
He's supposed
to leave this afternoon.
So this evening it is.
So this evening or tomorrow morning it is, based on good old Mother Nature. But back to your original. What this started out as tournament talk. Like when you're looking at like these upsets, I kind of try to like avoid the ones that like everyone's on. I think the entire country is on UC San Diego. Yes. I know the stat
Yale as well.
I know the stat of like the Big Ten tournament champion hasn't made it to the second weekend, and I forget the amount of years, but I know it's been quite a while since the Big Ten tournament champion has made the second weekend. I think regardless,
it's been 4.
Yeah, it's been a while. Michigan had to kind of try to dodge they're not that good. They're just lucky. Look at all these like one possession, 1 point wins, all that sort of thing. I think I think the country as a whole is going to be on UC San Diego.
I will say though, for proper reason though, like I know where you're coming from in regard where it's like you kind of want to fade the public, especially when it comes to these double-digit seed upsets. I will throw it out there though. Michigan is awful taking care of the ball.
Oh, absolutely.
They are atrocious. Yeah. They are literally the worst team in the country, 14 turnovers a game. And UC San Diego, first off, Lee Sterling said that Michigan couldn't name 2 players up on UC San Diego's roster. I can. Aniwa Tate Jones.
Hey, you said that name well, by the way.
I know. Really, you were surprised when I did that, right?
Yes and no. I mean, as somebody who used to call games for a living, when you see those names, you're like, oh, God, please don't tell me he's one of their key players. He's their best player. Damn it.
No. I went to the UC San Diego phonetical media guide.
It rolls right off
Aniwa Tate Jones. That guy's going to be a superstar for UC San Diego. So I know you're I don't mean to, and I am going to push back against you because I do think that is the one that I'm on heavily. I just think UC San Diego's got a dude, and they match up perfectly against Michigan with how aggressive they play their defense.
Yeah, and when we were making these picks, like you don't want to the 12-5 thing is always super popular, and all the 12-5s are the matchups are really intriguing between my the reason I'm going west, the Colorado State Rams, McNeese against Clemson in the Will Wade Bowl. Will Wade's selection Sunday press conference. They're like, we know you went to Clemson, but what does Clemson mean to you? And he's like, we don't practice on the Saturdays in the fall because I got to watch Clemson football. I'm still that locked in on Clemson. And McNeese, they were a really popular pick last year before they got housed by Gonzaga in Salt Lake City. And then the rest of the 12-5s, Liberty and Oregon. I still, this is Dana Altman's season. This is when, whether they just sneak up on you and they're like, oh, there's Oregon again. There's Oregon winning games in the NCAA tournament. I don't know how to feel about that. Liberty's really efficient. That's going to be that game is going to not be too aesthetically pleasing to watch for me and all 4 of my eyes. It's just going to be very, very slow.
I see what you did there. Well done.
And then the last 12-5, and then the 12. What's the fourth 12-5? No, we mentioned them all already. Duh.
Clemson, McNeese, Michigan, UC San Diego, Memphis, Colorado State, Oregon versus Liberty.
Yeah, I've more so got my eyes on 10-7s, 10-7s and 11s. If I'm looking at upset stuff.
So Drake, Missouri is one that comes to you. What is it? Vanderbilt, St. Mary's will be
Vandy, St. Mary's.
Very interesting.
The winner tonight, Texas Xavier and Illinois.
Yes.
The 7-10s, it's UCLA, Utah State, KU, Arkansas. I'm with Lee on Arkansas in that matchup. Jimmy, plug your ears. You may not agree with what I'm. I know
Jimmy,
you.
Again,
you
I'm
do.
probably going to pick the same thing you are.
This Kansas basketball season needs to end. This Kansas team, I don't want to go full soapbox. I've got a lot of unhealthy relationships in this life.
They need to take it out back and shoot it.
I've got a lot of unhealthy relationships in this life. Near the top of the list is my relationship with Kansas basketball. You
go to a lot of those games.
You go to more games than I do.
You went to how many games did you go to at Fog Allen this season?
Just one at the Fog. But I pay as someone who paid real American dollars to watch that team play.
Ooh, I don't remember the last time I paid money to watch.
Not once. Not twice.
3 times.
But 3 times. And they just underwhelmed every time.
Is this a dating metaphor?
Maybe.
Okay.
It might be.
Okay.
Paying too much for these dinners, you're not getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Expensive dinner, no dessert.
Last year's Kansas team put Bill Self in the hospital. The fact that this year's Kansas team hasn't is shocking to me. That
weed is legalized in Missouri. He can get something to kind of numb the pain of watching his team.
No, this Kansas season needs to end. So and another 7-10 that I'm intrigued by is New Mexico Marquette.
So that is a fascinating matchup.
Yeah, New Mexico Marquette very much has my attention.
Let's break this down because Marquette is a terribly inconsistent basketball team, and they've been a terribly inconsistent basketball team all year. But they are one of the best in the country when Cam Jones is playing at a high level, and I would argue that they could beat just about anybody in the country when David Joplin, Stevie Mitchell, and Cam Jones are clicking. The problem is that that's happened. What? Twice this year. Just hasn't happened. Now the thing is that they looked damn good against Xavier at the end of that game. They were down 14 in the second half. Joplin picked it up. Cam Jones had probably the best second half of the entire season for him, and he's had plenty of pretty good second halves. Dude, there's someone going 6 miles an hour down Dodge right now. Look at this guy.
Damn.
Oh man,
can't wait to drive
careful
home.
Out there. Oh my goodness.
Yes, be careful.
Guys, it is.
Be careful.
It is 8:20 right now. The sun is not out
at all. This is kind of weird.
It is dark out. This is a gloomy. Considering where we were yesterday, this is absolutely insane. But back to
did Elon cancel the sun?
Maybe.
Huh?
Maybe.
Back to Richard Bertino and New Mexico, they play at an incredibly fast pace. They push the ball down the court. I mean, they are close to Alabama-type metrics when it comes to their pace of play. And Marquette is quite the opposite. I think they're like 170 in pace. I mean, this isn't a team. They're not crawling like Drake per se, but with how inconsistent Marquette is and how much New Mexico pushes the ball, it's a bit of a nightmare matchup in the regard that if you show any sort of inconsistency from your top three guys, which we've seen plenty of from the Golden Eagles this year, New Mexico and Richard Pitino are going to push it down your throat. They are going to make you play their game. And that's how these upsets happen. These upsets happen when you have two teams that play just opposite styles, and the other team and the higher seed makes you play the way they want to play. The number one thing that I think about was, I think it was in 2017, Wichita was a 4 seed, and they played a 13-seeded Marshall team. Mm-hmm. And this Marshall team was fast. And this was a Wichita State team, which I think was the final year of Kyle Singler, and they were a legitimate tournament contender, Final Four contender, and Marshall just brought it to them. And it was just one of those things where it's like, man, if you can push this pace of play and you can make these teams fall into your trap, New Mexico has the ingredients to do that. And the funny thing is, though, Jacob, this isn't a 14-3. Mm-hmm. This isn't a 15-2. It's a 10-7. Yeah. They already, like, Donovan Dent is already an awesome player. Yes. Like he should have been an All-American yesterday. Mm-hmm. He wasn't. Like, New Mexico already has the makings of a good basketball team. Now you're throwing in that they have a potential matchup advantage against an incredibly inconsistent team. I'm all over New Mexico for this game. I think it's an incredible matchup, and right now they're a 4-point underdog.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Donovan Dent. I really like Nelly Jr. Joseph. I know I've talked at length about my admiration for the Mountain West this year. I will stop. I promise. Like I will. This is not the only reason I'm. Yeah. Yes.
It always comes back to Mountain West basketball. Jacob Bigelow.
Yeah, the small pieces that are left of my cold heart. The majority of them belong to the Mountain West Conference. But
this is why you're Jacob B. Chavez now.
I guess according to the YouTube chat, but
according to Reverend Rule, who's been on one this morning.
Yes.
Yeah, according to them, I apparently knocked up someone when I was in high school based on our age difference.
Yeah.
It's not that great.
Yeah.
You're a younger looking lad than you look.
But yeah, I mean, you want to talk about like inconsistent teams. I mean, Memphis is one of them, and that'll be the last point I make about Colorado State. But like Memphis, like they can just get so careless with the ball. They're super athletic, but like they can look like they're on cruise control quite a bit, and Colorado State and their discipline and the offense they run, and plus they're just on a hell of a heater right now. So that's like when I look at that, I want to look toward teams that are playing their best ball this time of year, not teams that have coasted in or like they're in by the skin of their teeth, even though North Carolina proved that theory to maybe be wrong last night, but San Diego State had been slumping for a while. But I mean, if I wanted to go like full double digit, like what's the biggest one that I think I'm all the way locked in on? It's High Point. Like I'm kind of all the way in on High Point. They should have been in the tournament last year. They get upset in the Big South tournament. This Purdue team is not last year's Purdue team. Obviously, there's not a giant man in the middle. Yeah. They have the best point guard in the country in Braden Smith, but the rest of that team, in their interior defense leaves a lot to be desired. High Point. I mean, that's going to be a track meet. That's going to be one of the most entertaining games in these first couple days, and I'm all in on the Husk Bus.
I'm not as high on it, just because I do think there's a little bit of PTSD from St. Peter's and FDU, where people look at Matt Painter and think that maybe he's susceptible to being upset. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith are two of the best players, not only just in the Big Ten, but in the country. And don't get me wrong, I like what Alan Huss is doing, and they have some size at High Point, and that definitely has been a problem for Purdue. I mean, there's a reason why that team had lost to Michigan, because they could not handle the physicality of Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf, right? And watching that massive matchup at Mackey between Wisconsin and Purdue, what did that game come down to? It came down to John Tonje just being able to put the ball on the ground and get to the basket whenever he's so damn pleased. And so I definitely think there is a bit of a concern when Purdue goes up against teams that has some sort of physicality, but at the same time, it's like they're a 4 seed for a reason. And Braden Smith is so damn good.
Yes, he is.
And like Matt Painter, I know in the past, like with advanced preparation in these tournaments, necessarily hasn't been the best, but like they are death by 1,000 cuts. They really are. And if they want to slow that game down a little bit, they'll be able to. And they just have the two best players on the court. And at the end of the day, I feel like, yes, the interior defense definitely is a problem with Purdue. But I think another part of Purdue's problem when they had Edey before they made it to the national championship last year was at times they could get a little bit too one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing one-dimensional about this Purdue basketball team on the offensive end.
Yeah.
And I think when any mid-major takes on a team that has just the Swiss Army knife that is the combination of Kaufman, Wren, and Braden Smith, there's nothing that can simulate that for High Point. High Point has not played a team where Purdue, where that offense is that potent. And so, don't get me wrong, like it's going to be a good game, and I believe in Alan Huss. And Alan Huss is a really good coach, but I don't think I'm as much on that upset as I am on the UC San Diego over Michigan upset. I'm really on this Bryant game. I think I'm more so on Bryant and Michigan State than I am on High Point. And I know it's a stupid statement, but
watch Michigan State win by 25.
I know. I mean, that's just my luck, right? Like anytime I make some sort of bold
I'm trying to
prediction,
listen to you to take the bait and be like, you might be onto something, but I just can't come around on that one.
It's just Michigan State, the bread and butter of that team is rebounding. And you look at Bryant's lineup, like they have the physicality and size in order to combat that, along with the fact that they push the pace. And they don't just push the pace and play, have like 75 possessions a game. They push the pace and they scored 8 points a game. Like they are able to score. And they got some pretty good guys on that Bulldog team that will be able to, just be able to get to the basket. So I like the High Point game. I don't love it. I really, really like the Bryant game. But I love the UC San Diego game. Lipscomb over Iowa State is a game that we haven't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State, when they played at Hawkeye Carver Arena earlier in the year, looked like a surefire Elite Eight, Final Four type team.
Absolutely.
As the season has gone on, and don't get me wrong, TJ Otzelberger has done an incredible job over there for the Cyclones, and they're still a very, very good team. But I'm just afraid that they peaked at the wrong time of the season, and they've just been banged up too much down the stretch and have just lost a little bit of confidence because they don't have the guys that they're not continuously playing with the guys that got them success earlier in the year.
Yeah, no Keyshawn Gilbert really stings for
so
Iowa
bad.
State. And Curtis Jones, who has been in and out of the lineup, he's come off the bench throughout the year for them. He's been incredible. Taman Lipsey, hometown kid from Ames, he's had an up and down year for them. I mean, I probably saw Iowa State in person when they were at their peak, when they were the number 3 team in the country, and they ran Kansas out of the building at Hilton.
Yeah,
and the thing about Iowa State is like they don't have any like highly rated recruits. They don't have any like top 100 guys. Like that's just a bunch of dudes that fit a system, fit the TJ Otzelberger mantra. They take after their coach. I don't think it's a requirement for them all to wear shirts that are a size too small. But other than that, they take after their head coach. And it's the classic coaching cliche, next man up, guys staying ready and all that. But I mean, no Keyshawn Gilbert really does sting because this is a team that took Auburn to the wire in Maui at the start of the year when they were at full strength. They blew a double-digit lead. I don't know if they dropped to Lipscomb, but I don't think they're making the second weekend.
It looked like
unfortunately,
a team in December and January that looked like, with their size, physicality, rebounding, defensive effort, and three-point shooting, looked like, man, this team's primed to go to a national championship game. But it's sad to see when the team kind of falters a little bit off of things that are injury related and just non-continuity related. And unfortunately, they'll be out with one of their best players we'll see with the status of him, but it doesn't look good at all. Hey, we're going to talk Jays for quite a while now. We're starting our little bit of Jays hour here. We got Mike Rutherford.
Yeah, get off the message boards. We're getting to them.
Talking about Louisville. Then we're going to bring on your very favorite Omaha's own writer, John Walker at 920. Don't go anywhere. Hey, you're listening to Gary Mann on 1620 Zone.
Hey, you like food, you like fighting. I don't know if that's related, but anyway, it's the Omaha Food Fight presented by Union Bank and Trust. The round of 64 is underway. The field will cut in half. That sounds morbid as first round voting ends after Wednesday, March 19th. Hey, that's today. Remember, you're supposed to stay at home. We told you could. The second round featuring the 32 remaining contests will then run from tomorrow until the end of the weekend. How do you do this? Well, you know how to do it. Vote now at 1620thezone.com for your favorite restaurant and see if they advance to the round of 32.
So I don't have a bookie.
He's sitting next to you.
To much of everybody's surprise, I don't have a bookie. I go out and I make my own. No, I go out and I make my own bets. But what I do have is a guy who's a reverse bookie, who goes out and gets me historical lines. Like if I'm curious about like trends and stuff like that.
The Colts are not going to cover against the Jets.
Exactly. Like I have a historical line bookie to compare to certain things. I was curious, and I almost dropped the Lee Sterling, but back in, I think it was 2017, Middle Tennessee was a +2 underdog against Minnesota. That was a 12-5 matchup. That's the second closest a 12-5 has ever been since back in 2006. Syracuse was a 12 as a +1.5 underdog against Texas A&M. So, or no, sorry, I got these wrong. Middle Tennessee was a favorite, -1. Yeah, Middle Tennessee was a favorite against Minnesota as a 12-5, and Syracuse was a favorite and -1.5 against Texas A&M. So those are the two times that has happened for 2006 and 2017. Right now, Colorado State is a +2 or is a -2 dog or favorite. Jesus Christ, Matt, favorite -2 favorite.
Yep.
Ugh. Yeah.
What does Notre Dame have to do?
I just had a heart attack. So this would be the third time since the tourney has expanded that a 12 would be a favorite over a 5. The third time. Middle Tennessee in 2017, Syracuse back in 2006. So there you go. That would have been a much greater stat to give out if I didn't fumble over my words like a dummy. Looking towards things that are dumb.
Yes.
Ryan Kalkbrenner made the third team of the AP All-American selections. That is dumb. I don't understand what our gripe is against 7-foot centers. I feel like we have this just animosity towards some players because they just happen to be bigger than everybody else. Ryan Kalkbrenner is one of the best defensive players in the country. And not only that, if you look at his offensive performances this season, you look at his offensive averages, Ryan Kalkbrenner is averaging 19.4 points a game, 8.8 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. He is averaging more points per game than 4 players on the second team All-American team. Okay? He is averaging more rebounds than 4 players on the second team All-American team. Okay? Hell, he is averaging almost as many assists as JT Toppin. Okay? So it's just like, I don't understand why this guy, who is so damn good defensively, but then also has turned into this like, go give the ball to Ryan when we need to score the most type number one option. Why he didn't win Big East Player of the Year, and he didn't even make the second team All-America, let alone the first team.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing with a lot of these postseason awards, it's not just a basketball thing. I mean, it's in terms of, you know, who are the best players on the best teams. Like, think about we did not see it with the Heisman this past year, but that had kind of become the stereotype. Was like, oh, best player, best team. That's what's going to happen. But I mean, if you look at the first team, presumed number 1 pick, Cooper Flagg on a 1 seed. Johnny Broome, best player on a 1 seed. Braden Smith, best point guard in the country. No one's arguing with that.
No one's arguing.
Mark Sears, Mark Sears is on
Mark
Sears is on a 2 seed. Clayton's on a 1 seed. Second team, Toppin's on a 3 seed. He's, you know, averaging 18 and 9. I mean, that's pretty good. Cam Jones, we just talked about the inconsistency of his team in the last segment with Marquette. Tanjay's had a hell of a year. Omaha's own. PJ Haggerty, like, I raise an eyebrow at PJ Haggerty. He's a really good player, really athletic. That, you know, that sort of thing. Memphis is inconsistent, but he's been consistent all year. And then RJ Lewis, there's been plenty of discourse, debate between Lewis and Kalkbrenner over these last couple of weeks. But I mean, that just becomes, you know, it just becomes a numbers game, and it's unfortunate. I mean, right? I mean,
Ryan Kalkbrenner getting the third most amount of votes for the AP All-American teams in the Big East and getting the second least amount of votes in the entirety of the AP All-American. It just makes no sense to me. But look, he got disrespected. Creighton got disrespected. There's another team that got disrespected, and funny enough, we're going to be talking to one of their writers. Louisville got absolutely disrespected in the NCAA tournament. They'll be playing the Creighton Blue Jays tomorrow. We're going to talk to Mike Rutherford of Cards Chronicle. You don't want to go anywhere for this. This is great bar talk. You want to know more about Louisville and who the Jays are playing? Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Gary and Matt. There was a lot of discourse about a certain team in Omaha maybe being disrespected with the seed that they got, but I don't think any disrespect happened more than what occurred in Louisville, Kentucky. And frankly, it's at the dismay of not only the Creighton Blue Jays, but also the Auburn Tigers, who, regardless of who wins what will probably be the most competitive game in the tournament tomorrow to open up the tournament between Louisville and Creighton, they will have to play a very, very good team. And we bring in a very, very special writer of the Card Chronicle, Mr. Mike Rutherford, who covers the Louisville Cardinals. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Mike, I got to ask you, man, you're in Louisville. You guys were the top 6 seed on Bracket Matrix heading into Selection Sunday. You're sitting there, you're anticipating, okay, maybe Louisville's probably a 6. Maybe they got bumped up to a 5 because they made the ACC championship game. What was your reaction, man, when you saw the Cardinal flash up on the 8 line?
I think it was like everybody else, which was just pretty stunned. You always know there's a possibility that you're going to get a seed much lower, or sometimes even higher than you anticipate going into Selection Sunday. It's happened to Louisville before. I think a lot of people around this area have brought up the fact that in 2005, Louisville was the number 3 team in the AP poll, and they ended up being a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which shocked a lot of people. That team ended up going to the Final Four, so it ended up being okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think most folks around here assumed that Louisville was going to be a 6 seed. They had hoped that there would be a 5. There was an outside shot. They thought that they would be a 7. So to see them pop up not just as an 8, but to pop up as an 8 underneath the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, and then against a Creighton team that I think a lot of people thought would be sort of an 8 seed, 7 seed, it seemed like a nightmare scenario, and it really put a damper on a day that the entire fan base had been looking forward to for 6 years. And it's been the talk of the town, no question about it, for the last 48 hours around here.
Yeah, Mike, and you talk about, just the fan base and looking toward, getting back to where Louisville basketball belongs. I mean, what a difference a calendar year makes, right? For this program, you guys get out of the Kenny Payne era and year 1 under Kelsey and the reaction to that hire. I mean, just you've seen it all when it comes to Louisville basketball. I mean, you give the people in Omaha just a quick compare and contrast of this time last year in the world of Louisville basketball compared to right now in year 1 under Kelsey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where I would start. We could talk about this for 4 hours if you wanted to. I mean, you go back to even like the scandal starting in 2017 and the FBI stuff in 2019, the abrupt end of the Chris Mack era. 3 years ago, the last Chris Mack team where he resigns in January, I think a lot of people around here thought that was as bad as it could possibly get. The team won 13 games. It had a lot of talent, and you're like, man, at least better days are ahead. And then Kenny Payne gets the job. You win 4 games in your first year and 8 games in your second year, which at a place like Louisville with the inherent advantages that you have, you've got to work hard to only win 4 games and 8 games in 2 seasons. So I think people knew that a turnaround of some sort, especially in this day and age, was possible with the transfer portal and NIL and all this stuff. But to be back here in the NCAA tournament in basically the blink of an eye, especially when you consider the injuries that Louisville dealt with back at the beginning of the season, has been remarkable. And I think that's a big part of the reason why the fan base is so uniquely hurt by the selection committee's job, is because this team has been such a dream that they've given this city so much joy, losing just 2 games since the calendar flipped to 2025.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be this gigantic day of celebration and cathartic moment for the entire Louisville fan base. And instead everybody's just kind of, ticked off for the entire day. And it feels like something was taken from them, but still, big picture speaking, the entire fan base is thrilled with where the program is.
I mean, it's incredible. When we talked about it yesterday, that's a pod where like everybody should be pissed off, right? Like Louisville should Louisville should not be the last 8 seed. Auburn should not have to play 2 of the better 8 or 9 seeds, period, end of story, in the round of 32 game. And then on top of that, at least a bit of a credit to Louisville, like at least it's in Lexington, Kentucky, right? But like there's just no way around the fact that was just a major flub by the committee on a long list of flubs, in my opinion, in this bracket, Mike. But let's move to one guy, Omaha's own Chucky Hepburn, who has been the catalyst for this Louisville Cardinal team this season. Just what have you seen from Chucky this year? And just, if you can, just put into words the impact he's had on this program.
He's been phenomenal. The way that I sort of phrase it around here is every generation of fans, when you're growing up in those formative sports years, you kind of have a guy, right? Like there's the signature face of Louisville basketball at that time, whether it was, Terrence Williams, Peyton Siva, like when you get older, you're like that. I was a DeJuan Wheat guy growing up. And for the last handful of years, I think that younger generation of fans, they haven't had a guy that sort of defined Louisville basketball. And I think it's Chucky. And it's strange because most of Louisville basketball heroes over the years have been guys that have played here for at least 3 years, most of them 4 years. Chucky's only going to be here for a year. His lasting impact, though, is going to go well beyond this. He's out there. He's going to youth basketball games. He's showing up at the high school games. He's visiting sick kids in the hospital. And he has such a signature look too that I think it helps with the fro with the little yellow dye in it.
Yeah.
But just the way that he plays, he does all of the little things that I think this fan base appreciates so much. The energy on defense, being a team first guy, always being the first guy over there to help a teammate who's on the ground. And then of course the heroics that he showcased at the end of games so much. He's meant a lot to this program and this fan base as it tries to lift itself out of the depths of basketball hell here. But he has been, we thought he could be good. He's been light years better than I think our highest possible thoughts were for him.
We're off.
Yeah, Mike, and around here, like Chucky, he had, there was a run where he was going at Hunter Salas in high school games. Those two grew up together, state championship games that involved Chucky, Hunter, Frankie Fiddler. There was a lot of Omaha guys making an impact around college hoops this year. But to get specifically the matchup, I know you probably haven't done like too much of a deep dive, but the matchup against Creighton, obviously Kalkbrenner is the focal point. Louisville, they'll have, that's quite the task for Waterman. Chucky going at guarding Ashworth. What do you like about the matchup for the Cards, and what sticks out the most about Creighton that makes you raise an eyebrow from the Louisville perspective?
Yeah, I wrote a big thing about kind of breaking down Creighton after watching a ton of stuff the last couple of days. It's up this morning on the website, and it's a scary matchup. I mean, any team with Ryan Kalkbrenner is a scary matchup for anybody in the NCAA tournament. I think there are things to like for Louisville. I think there are things to be concerned about. Louisville against big-time centers, and they've played 3 straight games against teams that have had like 7-foot centers in the middle that have been pretty offensively skilled. None like Kalkbrenner, but Louisville has struggled a little bit with, kind of, I think, overhelping and leaving shooters open on the perimeter when a 7-foot center catches the ball in a scoring position. It's going to be a gigantic assignment for James Scott, who is he's been very good for Louisville this year, but is more of a kind of slender, athletic big as opposed to a big bruiser. He's going to have to play extremely physical without fouling Kalkbrenner. And then Louisville's going to have to know when to dig and when not to dig. You can't leave certain guys out there on the perimeter. It's not just Ashworth. If you let a guy like Jemiah Neal get hot, that can be the X factor in a game like this. So I think the fact that Creighton shoots the ball, any team that has the ability to go like 18 of 32 in a game for 3 is terrifying. I know they haven't shot the ball particularly well over the last month or so, but you've got a lot of guys that are very streaky. And I think that's scary because at times Louisville has struggled with not overhelping and leaving open shooters on the perimeter. I think the one thing that bodes well for Louisville, one, they should have an athletic advantage in this game.
Okay.
The teams that have given them the most fits this year are the ones that are just more naturally, better leapers, faster guys in transition. The bigger, better teams loaded with future pros have really given Louisville a lot of trouble. That's not exactly great. And then I think Creighton's turnover problem. Louisville's done very well at creating points off turnovers. This feels like a game because Creighton forces so few turnovers and they give the ball away so much. If Louisville's not really dominating in points off takeaways, I feel like they're going to be in trouble in this one.
So you guys are pretty high, which, by the way, first off, Mike Rutherford of the Card Chronicle. Mike, you guys have a key injury here. You're a high volume 3-point shooting team, but Smith, one of your better 3-point shooters, he's likely to play. What is your tell right now? What's your read on his availability? Is he 80%? Is he 75%? How big of a disadvantage do you think it might be for Louisville that he may not be 100% ready to go?
It's a big deal. They've been pretty mum about this since the injury happened. I think that they haven't said it definitively, but the word's out. It's a high ankle sprain, which those linger for a long time.
Yeah.
And he suffered against Cal on the Wednesday of the final week of the regular season. Has not played in the game since. He warmed up for the first time on Saturday against Duke, did some shoot around stuff, and then went back to the locker room and said, I can't give it a go. So they're saying he's going to play on Thursday. I assume he's going to play on Thursday. The thing that really stinks for Rain, it's his last year of college basketball. He's from Australia. His whole family flew 20 hours across the country to see him play on senior day, and they haven't had a chance to see him play yet. So he's desperate to get back out there. Even if he's just 80%, having him out there is huge for Louisville just because it's such a constant distraction for the opposing defense.
Yeah.
You've got to follow him everywhere.
Yeah.
It creates space for the other guys. Even if he's not 100%, Louisville's got to have him on the floor on a Thursday afternoon.
Then, Mike, another thing that's been made about this matchup is where it's taking place. It is going to be in Lexington at Rupp. The last time Louisville opened tournament play at Rupp was the 2013 team. Patino even mentioned it in his Selection Sunday presser about we got that draw. We had 12,000 Louisville fans there, and that played a part. Is it gonna feel odd, seeing that much red at Rupp? And do the card? It's going to be expected to be pretty pro Cards crowd on Thursday, right?
Yeah, I think that's the hope, at least for Louisville fans, is that they're able to show out. Now, people aren't thrilled with the tip time. 12:15 is on a Thursday is not ideal for getting as many fans there as you can.
Sure.
But it's the third time in my lifetime that Louisville's been sent to Rupp. You mentioned the 2013 team. They were it was first and second round games. They were the number one overall seed, but they were expected to take care of business. They also, the only situation that's kind of similar to this one where they weren't seeded great and they still got to play basically in their backyard and teams were all upset about it, was in 2007. They were a 6 seed. They blasted Stanford in the first game. And then Texas A&M seemed to be the team that got kind of screwed by the whole thing. But they were able to knock off Louisville in a really, really competitive game with AC Law the fourth and that group. So we've seen it work out well for Louisville. We've seen it not be as much of a factor for Louisville. The thing about this team is they've played better on the road this season. So I think a lot of people were like, we don't really care. Like, we don't care if we want to play in Moscow. Like, give us the better matchup. Don't the Rupp advantages isn't that big of a deal. So we'll see. I think Louisville fans will show up. I think they'll be loud. I think they'll have a distinct advantage. But I don't know if it's as much of an advantage as a lot of people were kind of hoping it was going to be when the bracket was released.
Hey, Mike Rutherford of the Card Chronicle, at Card Chronicle on Twitter. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was an incredible breakdown. And hopefully, I know we will be rooting against your team, but hopefully it's a pretty good game. So really appreciate you hopping on. We'll talk to you in the future, all right?
Of course, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
All righty. Thank you, Mike. Mike Rutherford, at Card Chronicle on Twitter, one of the best in the business. Great writer. Hey, it's going to be one hell of a game early tomorrow. We're going to get the other side. We're going to get the other breakdown. We're going to see how the Jays can pull this one off. John Walker, the Omaha World Herald, coming up next. All righty, we'll get right into it because we're going to welcome in John Walker from the Omaha World Herald, who apparently has to be somewhere. I hope you got four-wheel drive, buddy, wherever the hell you're going.
No, he's in Lexington.
Oh, you're in Lexington.
He wouldn't be going anywhere.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I still thought. I'm so
He's
dumb.
working.
I am the stupidest human ever. Let's ignore that comment. Hey, John Walker, how are you?
Man, I'm good. I was just saying while I was waiting to get in here, Lexington, Kentucky, no snow, sunny, a little windy, but it's like 60 degrees right now. I'd imagine Lexington, Nebraska, a lot different at the moment.
Bad. Lexington, Nebraska, you actually can't travel on right now from Lincoln to I-80. It is rough. There are people who are like turning left on a Dodge, and it's giving Bigelow and I a heart attack right now on 50. Watching these people trying to navigate this absolute slush. Okay, hey, talking about tough things to navigate, a bit of a tough matchup for the Grady Blue Jays for sure. An incredibly difficult draw for them. Completely unfair that they have to play a Louisville team that should be a 6 seed. Regardless of the fact, let's go into this avenue though. Do you think Creighton felt disrespected being a 9? I mean, even that felt a little bit low for this team who, the Xavier loss didn't look great toward the end of the year, but still have been playing some really good basketball in a Big East conference that got 5 bids.
Yeah, I think they probably felt a little disrespected. Maybe not so much. Like, they knew they were going to be an 8 or a 9. So maybe not so much in that vein. But the fact that they got the second-place team in the ACC. Like, we talked to Greg McDermott last night, and he said, I think this is going to be the first time in the history of the tournament that the second-place team in that Big East that made it to the conference title game, tournament title game, and the second-place team in the ACC that made it to the conference tournament game, conference tournament title game, beat in an 8-9 matchup. Because he'll have Terrence Edwards Jr. on him, I'd imagine. So yeah, it's not ideal. It's really not. But I think the matchup is won and lost with with Stephen Ashworth and Chucky Hepburn.
Does this just come down to don't turn the ball over too much? Is it as simple as that?
Yeah. No, it really is, because if you're not turning the ball over, like, that means you're getting shots up, and you have to maximize possessions this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
great point.
The difference between you missing a shot and the difference in you not getting a shot up are drastic. Those are magnified this time of year. So yeah, I think it is. Like, yeah, you cannot turn the ball over, because Louisville's gonna just feed that and get out and run in transition like they have all year. They're pretty darn good at that.
Hey, so how worried are you about Stephen Ashworth and just him being a little bit worn down? I mean, I kind of went through it yesterday, looking at his game log, and just you look at the amount of minutes this guy has played, right? I mean, you're teetering on almost every night. It's either 36 to 40 minutes, night in and night out, and it's not one of those like. And I made the joke tongue in cheek. It's not like Tony Snell, 40 minutes of basketball. It is like, Steve Nash, 40 minutes of basketball. You have the ball all the time. And as we've seen the season go on, the shooting has decreased. Is he kind of is his gas tank up, you think, just because they've relied on him so much since the Pop Isaacs injury?
I don't know if it's up, but we'd be foolish to think that there's a lot left in it.
Yeah.
There's some, undoubtedly. How much? Well, we'll find out tomorrow. Yeah. And if they make it past tomorrow, we'll certainly find out Saturday against Auburn. But there can't be much left in it. Now, on the flip side of that, Creighton's training staff has their own kind of formula and metrics and data points that they have put together and compiled over the course of years, over the course of this season. And so they do a really, really, really good job, or I should say, Greg McDermott does a really good job of listening to them and putting his full faith in that group, so that when they say, whether it's a practice or a game, when they say, hey, yeah, he needs a blow, they'll get it to him. Or if they say, hey, Steven needs to just take it at a walkthrough level today, they'll do that. So, for that, he's got some in the tank. Sure. How much? Well, we'll find out sooner rather than later.
Another thing Greg McDermott's pretty good at, developing coaches. And the news yesterday out of Bloomington with Darren DeVries taking the IU job. John, I know this is just your second season, but I know being around the program, you've probably heard plenty about preaching the gospel of D-Rock and his impact on the Creighton program and the Creighton community. What was you had the clip of McDermott, he said, welcome to the pressure cooker. What was the reaction like around the Creighton group yesterday when the DeVries news came down?
Yeah, I think they were all happy. I really do. Like, they understood that West Virginia, it seemed like everyone understood that West Virginia is obviously a good job. They have vast resources. But the difference in West Virginia and Indiana, welcome to the big time, right? Yeah. Like this is Indiana. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think Mac's sentiment kind of echoed everyone I talked to. Like, they're happy for him. They know that he'll do a good job, but at the same time, welcome to the big time.
Hey, John Walker, the Omaha World Herald, joining us here talking Creighton versus Louisville. We talked to Mike Rutherford a little bit of Cards Chronicles. He kind of broke down the matchup, said some things similar. It's going to be difficult to guard Ryan Kalkbrenner, and that is kind of the biggest fear that they have. And he almost talked about he what I got from him, John, was we have a lot of good matchup advantages on the floor, but Ryan Kalkbrenner is almost like the trump card, where it's like, man, like no one's got an answer for that, and that's everybody's going to struggle for it. He ends up being the third team All-American selection. He's the third guy, the third vote getter in the Big East. I mean, is this Zach Edey fatigue? Is this Luka Garza fatigue? Like, this guy is one of the best offensive players in not only just his conference, but the country. He's one of the best offensive players in the country, yet he wasn't Big East Player of the Year. He wasn't even on the second team All-American, and according to the AP, he's the third best player in his conference. What is up? What are we doing here with this guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a little bit probably the Kalk fatigue.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the fact of the matter is when you're looking at these resumes to compare all of this stuff, people are going to go, oh, well, if a 19-year-old is doing the same as a 23-year-old, like,
Sure.
Oh, well, I would vote for the 19-year-old because he doesn't have the extra 4 years of experience. So that'll always play a part into it. But yeah, man, I mean, I know that, the AP voters don't because they possibly can't. They have their own beats to take care of.
Yeah.
Understandably so. But if you just listen to the way that coaches have talked about Ryan Kalkbrenner all year, it's nuts, man. But I think RJ Lewis probably rightfully deserved Big East Player of the Year. I'll be scorned for saying that, I'm sure.
You'll be scorned by me.
The only divider, the only separator is that St. John's won the league by 3 games.
Sure. It's a good point.
So it wasn't like last year, it wasn't best player on the best team wasn't enough for Tristan Newton to win because UConn didn't rip the league out of someone's hands.
Sure.
This year, St. John's did that.
Yeah.
So that was the difference for me. But I thought Kalk was the best player in the league, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah.
I thought Lewis was the Big East Player of the Year, but I thought Kalk was the best basketball player in the league. So
it doesn't really make sense, but it kind of makes sense. It's the crazy sports world of sports we live in. Hey, you got to get to immediate availability, so we'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining us, John. We'll see you next Wednesday, where hopefully we're previewing a Sweet 16 matchup for your Creighton Blue Jays. So we'll talk to you soon, okay, bud?
All righty. Thanks, guys. Let's ball.
See you, Johnny. Love John Walker, man.
He's the man. He is quite literally the man. What a ball. Just a little bit of personal bias from me, but John Walker is quite literally the man.
I think we're just happy to have him. Every time we bring in John Walker, we're just going to be like, and the man is here, and the man has showed up. Let me tell you something right now. It's a damn travesty that this game is the first game of the NCAA tournament. It is absolutely like the amount of mess ups that have gone on just within this bracket. North Carolina, I don't give a damn that they look good yesterday. They should not be in the tourney, okay? Number one, West Virginia should be in. Darren DeVries should be coaching in his 4th tournament in 5 years.
And he will next year.
And he will be next year, more than likely. And the absolute just what a just terrible job by when they start filling out the bracket, you got to think they start with the number 1 overall seed, right? Were they drowsy in the morning when they were doing this? How the hell do Louisville and Creighton end up together? And then how does Auburn get rewarded for that by playing a Creighton team? They're going to play one of 2 teams. They're either going to play a Creighton team that had a great win over a good Louisville team that's got a ton of confidence going into that game, or they're going to play a Louisville team in Kentucky.
Yeah.
How the hell does that happen?
There's a ton of questions with that bracket. Some people will tell you that none of it matters, nobody cares, and it'll just wait until the game starts. But there's a ton of questions. Obviously, you want to give the number 1. I mean, the locations and everything that plays into it. Like, you want to put the number 1 overall seed closest to, do you want to give them proximity? And unfortunately, the closest. It's Raleigh and Lexington are the 2 host cities in the southeast area, and Duke wound up in Raleigh, and that gave Auburn Lexington, Kentucky a conference arena that they're familiar with. They played at Rupp this year, but then if they you take care of business against your 16 seed, you get a de facto road game against an 8 seed in round 2,
or Creighton,
or Creighton,
and then on top of that, it's like. So this is the first game. What is probably going to be the most competitive game of the tournament, Louisville and Creighton, is going to be the first one that we have to sit down and watch. I mean, this should be a 5 o'clock, Central Time, 6 o'clock Central.
You know what time it's not at?
Eastern.
9 at night.
Well, yeah.
So that's why I don't complain. I'm going to be ready for basketball.
The Mavs got, they put the glass slipper on the wrong foot, having them play at 8:45. Local or 8:45 Central, 9:45 Central Eastern. Yeah, yeah. But
when Bucknell beat Kansas, that game was at 9 o'clock.
Gary brought up a really great point, though. There's going to be a lot of St. John's fans there, and it probably won't be your standard. Hey, the 15 might actually beat the 2, so we're going to start rooting for it now. But I mean, it's just up and down the bracket. It's going to be a really, really good game. It's going to be a really, really good day tomorrow.
Rocky
and
once
Friday.
beat Drago in Moscow.
It's well, it was funny.
Weather just like this.
It was funny when Rutherford brought up Moscow. I was like, well, Creighton technically, if you take a picture of Omaha from a certain angle at a certain time of day, it does look like Mother Russia.
Yes, yeah.
We've seen three tauntauns on Dodge already.
Yeah, I'm sure the Creighton burnerverse was like, did he just say Moscow? And they all rose up. They all rose up at once. Like does he know? Is he aware?
You know, the CHI Health Center, the Kremlin now, Mike. Do you know that? Do you know that's actually the new nickname for where the Jays play? But no, I mean, look, it's one of those games where it's like, damn, it's going to be really good, but at the same time, you're looking up and down, and it was really interesting to hear Rutherford talk about Kalkbrenner because you could almost hear the fear in his voice when he was talking about Ryan Kalkbrenner and the problems that he's going to give Louisville. But I worry a lot about, and John brought it up, the lack of ball handling, and that's been the problem kind of all year, with especially since Pop Isaac has gone down and with Stephen Ashworth being asked to do so much. It's just one of those aspects of, especially when you have a team where it's supposed to be spaced, right? Jackson McAndrew shoots threes. Isaac Trout shoots threes. Jason Green, is definitely more of that defensive piece, but, we saw him against UConn. He has the abilities to hit those threes as well, and which is why it's so important to have that main, not only just the main ball handler, but the secondary ball handler. And Jemiah Neal has done a really good job at being kind of that tertiary slash, hey, we need a bucket down the stretch. If you're hot enough, go and get it for us type score. And he's really had to develop into a better ball handler. But it's you look at this roster and you're like, man, if they had Pop, if they had one more guy where you can kind of spread it to on the wing and get some better looks for Fedor and get some better looks for McAndrew, which, by the way, Fedor is supposed to play. That's another key injury, and I probably should have asked Walker about it. That was, a bad development on my part.
But time crunch, though.
You did the best you can.
He's a professional. He had to go do his job. Crunch.
It's going to be a really good game, and then it's going to be one hell of a matchup against Auburn. And so, hey, we got more to break down, man. This is going to be quite. Tomorrow has a really good slate. We'll kind of go through tomorrow specifically what you're going to be watching for, what the spreads are going to be. I won't reveal too much. I'm not going to bury the lead on tomorrow's show, but we'll kind of give you a little bit of a nice appetizer, if you will. And talking about good appetizers, Texas and Xavier is going to be one hell of a game tonight. And if that 16-16 game yesterday has anything to say about what will happen later tonight as well, that could be set up to be a pretty nice day of hoops. So, hey, we're in the final stretch here on our Wednesday show.
Hold on, Rhodes, for 2 more hours.
But white knuckle it all the way home, or just kind of just sit in your bed, hopefully. I'm praying that nobody is out on the road as we see a bus just travel through a bunch of snow on Dodge. It's a rough one. Stay nice and tight and enjoy snow day, kids. You're listening to Gary and Matt. Tomorrow's slate is awesome.
It is.
Talking about basketball or the zone?
Well,
wait, we're the only show on the zone.
So what do we have? This is me being a bad radio host. Do we know specifically what games we're going to be broadcasting over here over the signal when we get off the air?
You're asking the wrong person.
Fair enough.
What I tell you earlier this morning.
Well, it should be pretty easy because this is the home of Creighton basketball, and Creighton is the first game up. So that should be.
I only hope
so. That should be.
I mean, after that, guys. Jeez.
Right.
Yes.
Hey,
I know.
I only hope my key card works. It does. I'm here. So.
Great.
Tune in, and then you'll see what games are on.
Creighton first game of the day. 9 seed Creighton, basically at Louisville. Louisville 2.5-point favorite, and then 25 minutes after that, we probably have one of the more exciting double-digit seeds or single-digit seeds. High Point taking on Purdue. Purdue 8-point favorite there. Then you got a Montana-Wisconsin game that we've heard a lot of.
Let's go Grizz.
Talk about these double-digit seeds. I think Montana is like the one that I've heard the least about in terms of like having excitement. Like there's just not a lot of love for the Grizz there. Hopefully they can beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin though 17 points.
This is Grizz football weather out there.
Then we go through a couple. 1 versus 16. Houston and Auburn. Okay. McNeese versus Clemson. That should be an interesting game. McNeese, I think people are kind of still not feeling great after they were supposed to be everybody's darlings last year. Then you have another really good game with VCU, BYU. That probably outside of Creighton versus Louisville will be one of the better games of the day, the more competitive games. And then you got Georgia Gonzaga. Then you take that nice little 2-hour break. You take that nice little 2-hour tip-off break, right? So we can get the different sessions in the door. And then Wofford takes on Tennessee. Then we're going to skip this game because we're going to have a conversation about it. Then Yale takes on A&M. 6:30, Drake plays Missouri in what? Well, Missouri.
Let's go, Drake.
Missouri's a 6.5-point favorite.
They're not like
might
you.
Be a little bit too high. Considering...
I don't. I think it's not. I think like
really?
my thoughts on Missouri Drake. And don't get me wrong. If we had more time with John, I would have gladly asked his thoughts on his guy Ben McCollum and the matchup against Missouri. But I think that Missouri has more ways to win that game just based on athleticism. Just based on athleticism, physicality, and like Drake. I think Drake would have to play a near perfect game.
I disagree. And the reason why is that, yes, I'm not contending with you that Missouri is the more athletic team than Drake. I mean, we're talking about a Drake team that is built majorly of, D2 basketball guys. Granted, that storyline is kind of meh at this point because we talk about freshmen like, oh, he's not a freshman anymore. These Drake guys aren't D2 basketball players anymore. They very much are.
Oh yeah, no.
D1 basketball.
They're not in the
MIAA
so anymore.
I know I'm the one who keeps saying it, but they are a damn good basketball team. I think to me it's all about what you're doing when you're heading into the tournament. Are you cooking? I love a team like Colorado State who's won 10 in a row. I really like Xavier. As long as they can beat Texas tonight, I think Illinois is going to have their hands full against Xavier on Friday. But at the same time, Illinois is a team that has been playing really good basketball heading into the tournament as well. I think that will be one hell of a game to talk about, and we'll talk about it on Friday. But Missouri lost 4 of their last 5 games of the SEC regular season. 2 of those games, or 3 of those games that they lost, were against teams who needed to win to get into the tournament. They lose to Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma. If those 3 teams don't win those games, they probably don't end up in the tournament. I mean, they were key victories, and then, they had a Kentucky home game to end the year, which you were hoping for them. Maybe that could turn the tide of the season. And look, they played well against Mississippi State in the SEC tournament, but then they got absolutely dominated by Florida. And it's just like when you've lost 5 of your last 7 games, that's concerning to me, and you haven't played well in that. But then on top of that, I think this conversation about Missouri and Drake, about, well, Missouri's just more athletic, it's negated by the fact if Drake can play the game that they want to play. Because you know how you suck the athleticism out of a team?
Grind them down.
You grind them down.
Yep.
You slowly cut them over and over, and you just take the ball and you dribble the clock out, and you run these possessions, and you're just able 5, 4, 3. Oh, here's a layup.
Take the air out of the ball. Yeah, take the air out of the ball.
And if Drake can play their game tomorrow, they will deflate any sort of tempo or athleticism out of Mizzou. And for a team that doesn't have momentum heading in like the Tigers don't. I think it's a tough matchup for them. I know we're on different sides of the ball, and you got a good argument with the fact that, if Missouri, you could say the same thing backwards, right?
Yeah.
If Missouri's able to run, Missouri can run, and Missouri can.
Well, I don't even mean just running. I mean, like, Missouri runs most of their offense through Mark Mitchell, and like if they're just running post feeds to Mark Mitchell, like if he could feast on the boards, he could feast inside. I just and the weird thing about Drake, I mean, Drake, they won their conference tournament, but because of when the Valley final is, they're going to have been off for almost 2 weeks, and they're going to be like, that's going to be weird in Wichita. I think Wichita was definitely expecting to get better. Some teams with closer proximity, Missouri and Drake are obviously close, but I think that might be the cheapest host site ticket right now are the Wichita games tomorrow, and that's the first game of the night session down there with Missouri and Drake.
Then you got Utah State, who, what a program they got over there. I mean, three straight tournaments with 3 different head coaches, very similar to what Drake has been doing. 8:45 Omaha versus St. John's. Once again, all eyes will be tuned into that one, which that will be on big CBS. So that'll be a very, very big game, an incredible opportunity for the Omaha brand to be exposed to the country. Then your nightcap, UC San Diego versus Michigan, along with UNC Wilmington versus Texas Tech. So this end of the night slate is going to be a really, really competitive one. I mean, Yale, A&M, Drake, Missouri, Utah State, UCLA. You're hoping that Omaha St. John's is a close game down to the wire. So, no complaints here. Going to be a really, really good slate tomorrow. I want to throw out this question to you. We've seen in this bracket that the committee took non-con schedules to heart. I mean, it was very clear that if not only your team did well in the non-con, but if your conference did really well in the non-con, you had a clear upper hand. And that's not a unique thing to college basketball. That's happened forever, right? But when we start looking at these conference tournaments, people are like, well, the conference tournaments don't matter. And I go, no, certain conference tournaments did. Like, there were the SEC conference tournaments, it clearly mattered. It clearly affected seeding with who won and who lost, right? And it did help out Missouri greatly that they ended up beating Mississippi State. And you look at the ACC tournament, you have to think that North Carolina making it to the semifinal, having a really good win over Wake Forest, and then, being very competitive, albeit with a Cooper flagless Duke team, probably put them over the edge in some regard into making the tournament. And their UCLA win actually, very much carried a lot of weight, and UCLA was playing very good basketball when they beat them. But the Big East tournament didn't matter.
Yeah.
It did not matter. Yeah. And the Big Ten tournament did not matter at all. And so it's one of those issues where if I propose to you, hey, maybe we take a 1 week or 2 week break in the middle of conference season to reset the non-con calendar or reset the non-con calibration. What would you say to that? And at the same time, do we have to think about making the non-con longer, or are we just overthinking this? This is just one bracket. College basketball is good as it is. Let's not tinker with things like we've been tinkering with everything else in the past.
Yeah, I've kind of got a mixed reaction. I mean, I kind of, I don't know about a full reset in the middle of the year, but it did. I mean, I think we were together on the night that this game happened, but when Illinois played Duke at Madison Square Garden in the middle of February, got ran out of the building. But the idea of marquee non-conference matchups later in the year has always intrigued me. Even if it's just a one-off, hey, Duke and Illinois, the story behind that game was they noticed we've got a layoff in Big Ten play, Duke's got a layoff in the ACC, let's play, we'll go do it. And it ends up being the most lopsided loss in the history of Illinois basketball. So it didn't really pay dividends for the Illini, but kind of hurt. Yeah, obvious, absolutely. So, but then you the reverse. I've talked about them they're I'm in an abusive relationship with them today. But Kansas basketball, the argument for them being a 7 this year, they have 2 of the better non-conference wins of any team in the country. But what they did in the Big 12, you'd think, and I'm not advocating for it by any means, But that's like when you look at their resume, it's like they beat Duke, they beat Michigan State, but it was in November. Does that really, like, should that really hold the weight that it does this late in the season? And it's an excellent question on your part, and I have mixed thoughts on the matter. I will. One thing you will not hear me like slander is conference tournaments. People are like, conference tournaments need to go away. They need to be this.
If they're not going to matter, Jacob, if games that are played in November and December matter more than games that are played in March, then you know what? Just get rid of the games in March.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
I'm sorry.
No,
I know you like. I just get rid of them.
He never experienced the true Big 12 tournament at T-Mobile.
What? I mean, no, I haven't.
It'd be right up his alley.
It would. Oh, he'd love it.
He'd
be the king of power and light by the end of the weekend if he went down there.
I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. There's a lot of events that I would love to go to.
Fran and Matt. For Schilla, not McCaffrey.
You're telling me that like Michigan running the table and having an incredible Big Ten tournament and playing 3 really close games and just grinding out and being the champion of one of the upper conferences in the country doesn't matter as much as a Kansas victory over Michigan State in November?
No,
what?
It should matter. I mean, that was my first thought looking at the bracket in a whole was like they made this on Friday. Like this was set in stone, on Friday or Saturday.
We've had some flickering.
Oh no.
Okay.
But it's the whole that was my first thought looking at it because I mean the teams Michigan beat in the conference tournament, like Wisconsin's a good team. They're a 3 seed. Like they're a 3 seed, and Michigan beat them in the conference tournament. They're on the 5 line, and they're going to be the most popular team picked against when everyone's making picks this week.
That's why I'm afraid to pick San Diego.
A Wisconsin team that's a 3 and a Maryland team that's a 4, and apparently what Kansas did in December.
And Purdue was a 4. They beat Purdue, Maryland, and Wisconsin. But it's 3 pretty good teams.
But apparently Kansas beating a 2 and a 1 4 months ago has more weight to this committee than some conference tournaments when they're actually clicking. They're actually clicking.
Yeah.
You look at Kansas, 2 of their wins at the end of the year were against a Colorado team that's terrible.
Yeah, and they did nothing once the calendar flipped. They did absolutely nothing. But
they regressed,
and they're still. That's for sure.
I need to buy a new team. Let's get those. Where's David Booth doing?
Just a stud.
I should have kept Zuby-Edge.
I don't know, man. You look at this, make it make sense. That's what I call this bracket. Everybody wants to call the regions a different thing. I just call this bracket the make it make sense bracket because some of the things just don't make sense. And one guy who always is good at making sense of things is Brandon Vogel. We're going to bring him on here to end the show. Don't go anywhere. Listen to Gary, Matt. Well, we're not walking through any valleys, but we are going to talk to a guy whose last name does begin with V. It's Mr. Brandon Vogel. That's probably not my best work in terms of transitions.
He's done okay today, though, Brandon. That's not his best one, but he's been good.
I've been okay. It's been a very seven seed type of driving and smoothness experience. And by the way, if
got hit in the hail by hail this morning,
I got rocked by hail. So when I mean driving, Brandon, it was so bad getting into the car this morning. Have you stepped outside today?
I have not, but I have different weather than you. I am not in Nebraska, but I saw the tweet that it was pretty awful, and have seen some things subsequently on Twitter that good luck for you. We had that here last week where it was batten down the hatches day on Saturday, but we made it through okay.
Hey, Brandon, I know that typically when we talk to you, we're more on the volleyball and football side of things, but I'm sure you know what week it is. It is what I am dubbing and what I've always dubbed the greatest week of sports with the NCAA tournament finally upon us. And it has felt like this tournament has taken forever to get there. Have you filled out a bracket? Do you plan on watching the games? What is Brandon Vogel's NCAA tournament plans? You have a Final Four. You have a champion. Where are we at here?
Yeah, complicated question. Shouldn't be. I will definitely watch this week. I still love that part of it. As the years have gone on, I've gotten less and less interested in bracket filling outing.
Sure.
I don't follow all of college basketball well enough to feel like I have unique insight. So my method for this is grab the People's Bracket from ESPN, which I feel like is pretty good stand-in for like popular opinion, and then look for value from there. I think the important thing with filling out a bracket is you got to have a point of view. So for those people picking Duke, which based on ESPN seems to be the majority in terms of a champion, you can maybe your POV is best player plus blue blood. Away we go. Totally defensible. Enough people are picking Duke that it's about the same as probably their real odds of winning the tournament. So from a value perspective, I think I'm headed towards Houston. But Auburn is also a good play. I have personal issues with backing Bruce Pearl, so I'll probably go with Houston.
Yeah, if it brings you any solace, Brandon, I'm with you on the Houston thing. I don't know if that brings you if that makes you feel better, or makes you feel worse. We were talking earlier. That's kind of where I'm at too. On counter read this week, you wrote about the women's team, the Nebraska women, going to the NCAA tournament in Texas. They are going to open on Friday against Louisville. And if they win, they likely see 2 seed and host TCU. So you wrote about the matchup, you wrote about the numbers, what looks good for the Nebraska women. Where in the recent run of the women's sports, the explosion, the blow up, everything that has been these last couple of years, it's long overdue. We love to see it. But looking at like in the recent realm of women's athletes at Nebraska, where does Alexis Markowski and her impact on that program, the community, and just the great, statistically too, it helps that she's pretty good at the sport she plays too. What realm does she fall in terms of like recent, women's athletes at Nebraska?
Yeah, she would be up there for me. I'll try and think of a comparison as I talk through this, but she, in my opinion, is one of the types of athletes who probably get a little bit undervalued because, like, coming in, the expectation was for her to be pretty good. Like, she was a good high school player. Obviously, her dad played at Nebraska, so you had the legacy angle. Two, and she shows up, she plays all 4 seasons, and she just is really good. So those instances where players are just as good, kind of as everybody thought, I think because everybody thought it coming in, tend to get overlooked a little bit. It's not like people don't appreciate or recognize what she did. It's just that was the expectation. So those are some of my favorite athletes over the years at Nebraska. People who just came in and are like, yep, as good as advertised. Not on the women's side, but like one of the first names that kind of comes to mind, for me is Rex Burkhead from football, like kind of a high school legend in Texas. That was a big recruiting get, came in, and he was just Rex Burkhead the whole time. It was exactly what you thought. That's kind of what I think of Alexis Markowski and her career at Nebraska. And hopefully we get to see her play at least a couple of games more. You mentioned Monday's newsletter. It was kind of just a quick look at the draw, which had just come out that Sunday night when I was writing that. Not that bad for Nebraska. If you go by the net ratings, Louisville's probably about the lowest of the 7 seeds. Nebraska's the second highest of the 10s. Harvard was above them, and TCU really good. Won the Big 12 both regular season and conference title, but of the 2 seeds, probably towards the bottom end of that too. So in terms of just a draw, Nebraska's got to go out and do it, and it's got to play well, of course. Not the worst you could get.
Let's go from one women's sport to another women's sport. Danny Busboom-Kelly came in with a bang, right? I mean, it was very shocking to a lot of people when John Cook decided to retire. And, I think people knew that it was on the horizon, that it was something that was going to happen, but, in the next couple of years, but, kind of bang out of nowhere. You were thinking that maybe he would stick it out until this very talented group of freshmen that, he's made now 2 Final Four runs with, we're graduated. Maybe that would be the time. But, besides all the fact, John Cook retires, Danny Busboom-Kelly comes in, incredible hire. People are incredibly excited. It's now been, 2 months, close to 3 months now, since she has been hired as the new coach of Nebraska volleyball. Is there anything different? Is there anything to report on? Has there been, I know they're in beach season. Has things changed? Are the practices different? Is she putting her flavor there? Or are we still kind of in the newlywed period of Danny Busboom-Kelly in Nebraska?
Yeah, I think the newlywed / honeymoon, the honeymoon being the beach volleyball season, which has kind of bridged that, that's an interesting one in that Nebraska added that sport and decided to compete in it. And it kind of keeps the players playing through this period of the spring. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that might be happening is pretty deep behind the scenes in terms of Danny and her preparations for the upcoming season. One of the things that's jumped out to me though is just like the interest level. Not that I thought it would drop off, but for them, to basically have this spring match, and ticket prices are basically regular season prices, and it's just it's the same demand as there would be almost for a regular season match or trying to get on that season ticket list. So there's a lot of excitement. It's it was the ultimate luxury you could have with John Cook, is like Nebraska is just going to be great. You're talking about, do they end up winning both the Big Ten and the national title, or maybe do they only get one or the other? That's kind of the area they entered every season, and now you still have that with the players that they have and the coach that they hired, but it's new. You've got a little bit of a novelty to it that, if anything, I think might have increased attention around Nebraska volleyball a little bit for at least this period going up to the time they finally play in the fall.
Yeah, and they're doubling up in the spring. They're going to have the Kansas match at Devaney. That's going to be part of the Husker Games event on what would have been spring game Saturday, and then they're also going out to Ord to take on, I think it was South Dakota State, right? It was going to be the spring match out in Ord. That's always a really awesome scene, great for that community. Brandon, you talked about the excitement and a big year upcoming next year for volleyball. You're going to get a football question from me. Shocking, right? Spring ball starts next week. As crazy as that may seem, spring ball starts next week. Do you feel like in general, because you've been doing this for a long time, you've seen highly anticipated spring balls, you've seen changes on rosters, changes with coaches, and all of that. Do you feel like the anticipation for spring ball going into year 3, Matt Rule, is a little muted? Is it a little lesser than what we've seen before? And if so, do you think there's one thing driving that, or is that just how the sport's changed?
Yeah, good question. I think in terms of, so I've been doing this since 2011. in terms of all of those springs I've covered, and certainly relative to the first 2 seasons under Matt Rule, I think muted is the right word. It's a little bit of wait and see. And you know, in a transfer portal era where you have more new additions, and in an era where more and more kids enroll early, that's kind of become the default strategy, unless you're an excellent basketball player, wrestler, track athlete, something like that. A lot of those guys enroll early, so you get a chance to look at some new players and hear from new players, which adds a little bit from what it would have been, say, 10 years ago. But for the most part, I think it's kind of a classic year 3 thing where, you can point to Nebraska was a little bit better. Year 1, a little bit better again, year 2, but it hasn't taken that jump to really pour, I think, gasoline on the enthusiasm fire. So it's let's see what they've got. Let's see what this O-line looks like with a bunch of players who are going to be out for the spring, replacing a bunch of pieces on defense. So there will certainly be some areas of intrigue, but in terms of enthusiasm, I think it's a little closer to wait and see than it has been to this point under Matt Rule.
Brandon Vogel of counterread.com. Brandon, before you get out of here, what do you got going up on the site? What are you working on? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, so I've been playing around with numbers as always. So looking at upsets in college football, I think you can show pretty conclusively that in basketball, upsets are happening more often.
Yeah.
Football's a little bit less of a clear picture. And then I've also got this thing on 9 wins, which, was the number that Tom Osborne never failed to hit, nor Bo Pelini. It's kind of strangely a big number in Nebraska, but I also think it's a unique number when you start looking at all of college football. It's kind of the point where if you win 9 games, that's typically about what you should win. Anything below that, anything over that, kind of becomes more subject to randomness. So working on that for the days ahead too.
That's incredible. Hey, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next week at the same time, 9:40. Hopefully we'll get your Sweet 16 picks, your Elite 8 picks. We'll dive deep into the basketball realm, get you being an expert by the next time we see you. So thank you again.
I'll sound smarter next week when
half
these teams are eliminated. So
you can't. I'm kidding. Hey, good seeing you, Brandon. You have a good one. Hey,
all right.
Shout out Jacob Bigelow. It was an incredible debut from you.
I'm tearing up.
Good stuff. We couldn't have had you on.
He's a damn natural.
Show. You are a natural. You could do this for a very long time if you so please. It was a college basketball day. We had the Indiana. We had the Iowa coaching job. We had everything. You were incredible during it. Thank you so much for coming out.
Slide in his DMs.
Hopefully, we will get you on in the future. You definitely played well enough to come back up to the big league roster.
Well, thank you, man. Hey, I can't thank you enough for having me. Jimmy, thanks for being a good host too. This was an absolute blast today. That was a blast.
We will have G Sharp on again tomorrow just mere hours before the Omaha Mavericks play their first ever NCAA tournament game. Jimmy, it'll be you and me for the seats preview.
Oh, what a downgrade after today.
Better days of college basketball. And we'll hit some women's college basketball tomorrow, too, as both Creighton and Nebraska women are going to be playing. So, hey, thank you for joining us today on Gary and Matt. We'll see you tomorrow. The crossover is next.